If Logic Pro has ever felt overwhelming, I made this video just for you. By the end of it, you'll know how to navigate with confidence, create your first song, and dodge some of the most common beginner mistakes. I've also included the exact Logic Pro session I'm using in this video, totally free, linked in the description so you can follow along. I've helped over 200 producers with Logic, and the first step is always this tour. If you're more advanced, I've linked my intermediate and pro level Logic tours down below too. First up, let's walk through the Logic Pro home base so you can start navigating the software with speed and confidence. Before we dive into the tutorial, go with me now to Logic Pro Settings Advanced. You're going to want to make sure that Enable Complete Features, this box is clicked. That means you're going to see everything that I'm seeing. If it's off, Logic is going to look a little more simple, but it's not going to allow you to see everything that I'm going to see in this tutorial. So this is your home base. This is an empty Logic Pro project, and I'm going to make my way. We'll talk a little bit about this window and then go left, and then make my way around, loop back, and talk about the different, most important icons and things you need to know. So when typically this would fill up with tracks. This is a track here. It says audio 1. And over time, I'm going to skip this shortcut, but I'm just going to show you kind of what it would look like. You'd have many different tracks here of different types of instruments, and they would go left to right throughout the whole session, depending on how long your song is. But right now, I'm just going to focus, I'm just going to bring that back down to one audio track. We'll get into tracks and things of that nature later in the video. Let's keep it really basic right now, just to get that confidence of where things are and what these icons are, what these main things you need to know in Logic, because it can be overwhelming at first. It's like, boom, what's going on here? So we have tracks. Within the track, you have this little fader here. It's a volume fader. So all the way left is no volume. All the way to the right is an increase in volume. Right here, we have panning. I'll get into more of that later, but panning will actually take the sound. For example, this is a guitar track. And you do this. You push that over to the, fill that in green. It will push the guitar track to the left speaker. And if you go over to the right, it's going to push that to the right speaker. If you go back to the center here, it's in the middle. More on that later. We have important buttons here: mute, solo, record enable, which we'll get into, and input monitoring, which we'll get into. Okay, let's make our way left here. Now, what is this window? It's called the inspector window. You can turn it on or show it in the screen by going to this button here, clicking that on and off. So inside the inspector window, we have two columns. The first column here on the left is the track that is highlighted. So if I just double click in here and say highlighted track, you're going to notice this left column track here now says highlighted track. So whatever is clicked, if I duplicate this track, just bear with me for a second. If I say new track and have that clicked, now this track is clicked in the left column here. So those are attached. If I click the highlighted track again, see clicking it here, now it's in the left column. So those are linked. What in the right column is where the sound, where the track is going to. So this will be more clear at the end of the video when we start exporting songs, but think of Logic, any DAW, digital audio workstation, is a software that groups lots of sounds together that eventually you can export one song, right? So think of this track right here on the right column as being like that one song you export. It's the final destination right now, this stereo out track, the final destination of where your sounds are going to. More on that later. If this is fresh to you, that can be This can be overwhelming, but it will start to make sense more when we actually have recordings in here. Right now, it's a little bit abstract because we don't have anything to work with. So inside the inspector window, we have, again, a volume fader. Notice when I take this fader down, watch what happens up here to this track. It goes down as well, right? Linked, those tracks are linked. Okay, so volume up and down, panning, again, left and right here. Watch it in that other track. They're both linked. And then we have this thing called read group. Let's wash over that right now because that's something a bit more in depth that we'll talk about later. Think of this button here as your signal to the track that's saying, hey, where is this track being routed to? Or let's say, where is this track going to? So we know where to export the song. At the simplest level, let's just leave it at that. You would rarely ever have to change this right now. When you get more into the intermediate and advanced levels of music production, we will start to change where we output sound so that we can be more productive with our productions, so we can affect the sounds in a different way. Sends, I'm going to brush over for now, and audio effects are also known as plugins, where if you click this window, you will get a list of plugins. Yours will look similar to this, where you can search for a plugin. You may have heard of like a Reverb plugin before, so I can just search Reverb, and it will show me all the Reverb plugins that are available for free in Logic, but also the Reverb plugins that are paid, that I've downloaded myself and paid for them. More on that later. Input is important. We'll talk on that later when we talk about input and audio settings. And these are some quick access buttons where you can click to get an EQ plugin and a compressor plugin. We'll talk about the setting more later as well. You see how, like, if we talked about everything at once right now, it would be super overwhelming, but I'm kind of highlighting the basic icons and elements that would easily make sense to what knowledge you have right now being a beginner without overwhelming you with too much knowledge. But all this is going to tie in later when we get to those things. So let's make our way to this up top here where we have track and we have region. These are specific parameters that you can edit further when we have audio. So if we have a recording that we did for our guitar or our voice, up here is where we can actually edit this recording further, specifically like the timing of the recording. If we want to fade in the recording, if we want to loop the recording, if we want to add gain or volume to the recording, we can do it in here. Sound like a broken record, but more on that later as well. So that's the inspector window on and off. Beside the inspector window, we have the library window, which pops open from the very left like this. And this window will look different depending on the type of track that you have selected in the main window here. So let's talk about that. So we have this track here. I'm going to add the track types. Audio. I'm just going to quickly add some other track types right now, just so you can see how the library it looks different. And I'll add let's add a drummer track. Don't worry too much about this right now. Just want to show you the difference here. Okay, so ignore. Okay, audio. The library looks different. Think of these as preset effects that you can add to audio. So what does that mean? It means that it will ideally change the quality of your recording. So if you've recorded a vocal or a guitar track, these preset effects here are going to add plugins that will hopefully make your guitar recording or audio recording sound better. So if I recorded a vocal, I would go to voice and I would put, let's say, a warm vocal. That means if I click this, it's adding plugins that will change the vocal recording to try to make it sound warmer. And same thing with if you want it to sound like a dance track or an edgy track. These are starting points to help you move in the direction to make your vocals sound hopefully better. When we click on software, you'll notice the menu changes. Now, and the library really is powerful when it comes to software tracks, because this is where we say, like, okay, when I'm making a song, and you've heard of like, oh, you can record anything in Logic, it has every sound available. This is where it happens. You add a software track. Again, that's going to track new software, and you choose the instrument you want to record. So simple as a piano, a ballad style, or a concert grand piano. I can play a chord. I can go, and I'll talk about more of how I could actually do that. You can't see my hands playing it right now, but there is a keyboard in front of me that is connected to Logic, and we'll talk about how you can get that yourself. And then I can go to, I can play drums. I can play an actual drum kit on my keyboard. Or I can play things like synthesizers, which are categorized deeper here to play something a bit more modern, let's say, like some type of keys. This could sound quite odd. And you can get quite creative, not only with the sound out of the box like this, but we'll talk about how you can dial in the sound and edit it more to your liking, so it's a bit more authentic and fits better within your song. But this is where you find sounds for free that you can use in your songs. You can put these songs on Spotify. These are all free and royalty-free sounds that you can use. Now, when I click on drummer, it goes to different styles of drum. Actually, it stays within a similar menu, but it's focused only on this drum kit. These are the Bluebird, Brooklyn, Detroit Garage, East Bay. These are all different styles of drum kits that sound different. And we'll talk a little bit more about multi-channel kits, because that's something that I think beginners should understand, so that they know that there's a different window that they can open to make their songs a little bit more professional. So more on that later. Let's continue with the icons. Okay, so we have a library we can open up. We can also press Y on our keyboard to open that up. Just the letter Y. And we have a question button here. So if you click that, you get this quick help, and that means you can highlight over anything. So as simple as highlighting over the play button here, the quick help window will explain what the play button is. To more complex things such as audio effects slot, or let's say something more like, okay, what's this? This is the replace button. Replace an existing recording or a portion of it with a new recording. So it just will tell you what everything is. It is helpful to have that on at the beginning. Quite annoying if you already know what things are, which is why I have it off. Toolbar just brings this little menu down here, which has more tools that you can use, important tools that you will use eventually, but not something you'll need at the beginning. So don't really even worry too much about that at the very beginning. Moving on to the right, we have 3 little buttons here. This is the controls button, which pops open from the bottom and will look different also depending on what track you have highlighted. So look, if I click audio now, this is going to change. If I click software, this is going to change. If I click drummer, this is going to change. So you can think of this menu as the controls to make the track highlighted sound different. So when I was talking about the software a second ago, and we were playing with the synth sound, I said you can edit the sound more to make it fit better in your production. This is one way to do it. In the controls menu, you can play with the timbre, the grit, the cutoff, the release, the delay, the reverb. If you don't know what any of these things are, that's okay. You might not. But something like grit is a bit self-explanatory, right? It adds some grit. Cutoff, release are a little bit more of an, I guess, intermediate advanced terms. But the best way to learn is actually just taking the dial at 0%. That's saying like nothing is happening, 0 is happening. But then moving it up to 100%, you will hear the difference in sound. And we will use these dials and edit the sound later when we start recording. The icon to the right of this is, what is this? Mixer. So it's funny, as I bring my knowledge back, trying to sit in your head as a beginner, these are icons that I rarely open anymore, but it's nice for me to do this again. So you can actually open this by pressing X on the keyboard, and this is your mixer window. So like if you've ever been to a show and you've seen the person mixing the sound like at the back, they have a mixer, and they will, if it's an old mixer, they'll be doing it with dials like this. So this is the same thing. And if I click again, the track highlighted will be highlighted. The track highlighted in here will be highlighted in the mixer. So if I click audio, it's going to say audio. And I can click the volume, watch the volume. It's connected in 3 areas: the mixer, the track up here, and the inspector window, right? And notice when I go software, it's the same thing. So this is where we mix our song. It's one area where we can mix volume. That means that we increase or lower volumes with our tracks to make it sound more cohesive and balanced. The next window to the right is the editor window. Again, the editor window will look different depending on what track you have highlighted in this section here. So audio, that we don't have any audio, so we can't edit any audio. Software will be blank too, because we haven't recorded any software MIDI data. More on that later, but you can edit it in here. And then drummer, you will edit the pattern, groove, and sound of the drummer track in the editor window. So this is where we will be doing some editing as well. It's different to controls. So controls, think of that as like editing the sound, the quality of the sound. And then editor, think of that as like editing the performance of the sound. So that would be like if you play the recording, okay, we can edit the timing of the recording, or the drummer, we can edit the timing of the drummer or the pattern of the drummer. Okay, moving on more to the right, we have fast forward, stop, play button. This is something that you would see in an old VCR. If you know what that is. Record. We have free tempo recording, which I'll brush over right now, and we have cycle. So cycle is important, I would say. When you click this on, notice the yellow bar that pops up. It's a use case that you'll want to get familiar with. If you put cycle on, you can now click and highlight this. And essentially what this means is wherever that is being placed, it will play that section. So if that's from 9 to 13, and you press play, that will play just in that section, and that will cycle or loop and will continue going on until you press stop. So you can make this smaller, you can make this larger, you can move it around. You'll start to notice you'll be using this cycle a lot as you listen back to your song. And you can quickly take that on and off by pressing C on your keyboard, or like stands for cycle. Okay, so next we have this custom display window where it shows your bar where you're on. So I'm on bar 9. That's where the playhead is, this white thing. That's the playhead. So I'm on bar 9. Here I'm on bar 11, beat 1. The tempo of your song, the time signature of your song, and the key of your song. So these values are very important, and I'll tell you why when we get into recording audio, but they are connected to other sounds in Logic. So when we bring in some more sounds, which I'll get into in a second, they are connected to your tempo and time signature. So that and key. So these are important to have set before you start making your song. You can also press this down arrow and customize the display to make it bigger by adding some other things. I just went to down here to customize control bar and display, and you can click things on or off. See, if I click on these simple ones, play and stop, those buttons have now disappeared from here, but I'll leave those on because they're fairly important. Don't worry about customizing right now. As you develop your skill set in Logic, you will start to realize that you do like a custom window, that you'll eventually, you'll learn what you want to have there. So for right now, I'm just going to do it as beats and project. Here we have, I believe this is low latency monitoring mode, so I don't know exactly what it is. I'm going to press the question and go here. No, replace. So there you go. I didn't even know what that was. Not something you need to know right now. I don't even really know what that is. I mean, replace an existing recording or a portion of it with a new recording. Okay, it sounds quite simple then. So just replace a recording. The tuner is important, and that will go on when you have an audio track, because you can only tune an audio track. You can't tune a software track. So if I click software, that tuner will go off. If I click audio, it goes on, and I can tune my guitar if I'm playing a guitar. This is the solo button, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and metronome, which are your count-in and your metronome. So these are really important for recording, which we'll get into. Over here we have volume. Again, left to right is just your volume, but you might ask, okay, what volume is that for? And this is important because this volume is your master volume, which will affect every single track. So if I turn this all the way down, you're not going to hear anything. If I turn this, back to where it was, you'll start hearing things. But just keep this at 0. Don't change this. You don't need to change this. If you want to hear things louder, just turn up the volume on your speakers and use that as a rule of thumb. Last few icons over here before we loop around are, this is your event browser, I think it's called. You won't have to do much in here as a beginner, but this will show you everything that you've done. Notepad, fairly self-explanatory. You can take notes here. Loop browser is something a bit more in depth, where you actually have free loops, which are different than software instruments. These loops are like guitar loops and piano loops, and you can search by descriptor, genre, or instrument. Thousands, look at 31,000 different sounds, loops that you can use royalty-free and release this stuff on Spotify. So what I was mentioning here is this stuff, these loops are will take into consideration your tempo and key. So for example, this loop here is actually recorded in the key of E, but when you drag it in, it will change to the key of C major for you, which is nice. But sometimes shifting the key too much makes it sound, the recording loses its character. Last icon here is the file browser. So this is where sometimes you might want to drag in something on your computer into Logic. This is helpful. Consider this like a Mac Finder window right within Logic. Okay, now we loop back around. There is this one thing I should mention, just this little sliver in here. It starts at the edit functions view, and there's some icons here. I will mention these as we go, because they are very in context things that we would use, other than these two sliders, which are just making the tracks fatter, I guess you could think of it, or slimmer, and these are making the tracks wider or thinner in a way too, or shorter, let's say. And I never use these because I know the shortcuts to use them and I find them faster, But at the beginning, if you wanted to make things fatter or shorter, it would be these sliders here, and I will talk about the shortcuts later on. Okay, let's move on to the next section of the video, which is talking about plug and play, how to get your equipment set up so you can easily record things. Like I mentioned, the MIDI keyboard in the section before this, and we'll talk a bit about microphone and interface as well. So first things first, we want to talk about our Logic Pro settings. So click on Logic Pro settings and just go to general here. So this is where all your settings are for Logic. What I want to point out here is within audio, we have our input and output device. This is important because this is going to be our kind of control system where things are plugged in. So your audio interface is what you're going to want to look out for here to be plugged in. So an audio interface, very quickly, is a box. This is an audio interface. It's a box that looks like this. This is a Focusrite 4x4 audio interface, which means you can plug in something like a microphone, like this, or a guitar directly into this box. And this box connects to your computer. So it's just a middleman. You need to have a middleman because you cannot connect a microphone into a computer, because microphones take these cords called XLRs. So this is an XLR cord. And notice how like you can't plug this into your computer. So you need this middle box to help you. Same with the guitar. Now, you might be thinking, well, I have a USB microphone, or I have something else that plugs directly into the computer. And cool, you can use that. Technically, you don't need to use an audio interface if you have a USB microphone or a guitar that goes connect into your computer via USB or something else. That's okay, but where there is a difference in quality. So I'll just mention it there without getting too deep. Although the USB quality is fairly good because of the technology has advanced so much in the last few years. Now, input and output. So we're just looking at these two boxes here. You want to choose your interface. So this interface, it's called a Focusrite. So I would choose here. It's not going to be here right now because I don't have it plugged in, but you're going to choose Focusrite as the input and output device. Okay, so make sure that is complete. Then what you're going to want to do is connect your headphones to this interface and your speakers. So your speakers will plug your speakers into the back, turn your speakers on, and plug your headphones into the front here. Now you'll be able to start hearing things that come out of Logic if these are set up correctly. And you'll be able to start recording from this box as well. One brief thing I'll mention on I/O buffer size and I'll loop back to this when we start recording. Leave this at 1024 as it should be by default when we start recording. And if your computer is maybe on the slower side and it starts maybe chopping up a bit, we might want to increase or lower the buffer size to get a faster, lower latent response to make our computer work faster. Okay, more on that later, but it is something I want to mention just to have that at default at 1024 right now. Okay, when that is set up, you can close that down. We'll get back into settings a little bit as the video develops, because settings is important and there are some things you do want to change to make sure Logic is running as smooth as possible. One thing though, the difference between Logic Pro settings audio, this output and input here, is different than your Mac input and output. Sometimes, I know, very beginner, but up in the volume here in your Mac window, the sound output of here is different to the one in Logic. I just need to mention that because I've had some students in the past fix the sound output here where you might choose your Focusrite and then are like, hey, no, I can't hear anything in Logic. Well, that's because you need to fix the input and output within the Logic Pro software, which happens to be in Logic Pro settings, audio. You can open these settings at any time too by pressing Command, comma. I'll mention these shortcuts a little bit as the video goes on, but I will add more to it and have a glossary at the end in the shortcuts section. Okay, when that is set up, there is one important thing I want to mention, just so we have all the prerequisites set up so we're ready to jump into the next section and start recording things. I want to talk about inputs. So when I was on this track here, let me just clean things up here by adding a new audio track here. So let's say I want to talk about input. So I'm going to name this track inputs. Notice on the inspector, in the inspector window, it says input 1. If I click on this, I can actually see that, okay, we're checked at input 1. I can change it to no input if I want, but I don't want to do that. I need to choose an input now since I've put it to no input. So with all this, you need to have your inputs correctly in place so that they're synced up with your interface. This is a lot if you're new to this. What this means, though, it's simple. Basically, you just kind of need to think like, okay, whatever is plugged in here, because some interfaces have many plugs. This one only has 2 plugs, but you can imagine an interface that has 16 plugs. So you're staring at 16 plugs. Okay, well, let's just say you chose any darn plug there and you plugged it in. Well, what Logic needs to know, okay, what plug did you put it in? So it's easy in our case, and it probably is for yours too, because you might only have 1 or 2. So it always goes left to right in your interface. This is 1 and this is 2. So if you plug it into 2 like this, then you need to go to your audio track, which you're about to record, and choose the input as 2. Now Logic is saying, okay, we see that you've plugged in a track to channel 2 and we're ready to record that track. If this was set to input 1, Logic thinks that there's something plugged into this track when there actually isn't, so you won't be able to record anything. So it's common troubleshooting error for beginners to make sure that those inputs are lined up with your audio interface. If you don't have an audio interface, a microphone, or a guitar, that's okay. What you can do at the beginning, it's good to invest this stuff. If you're here to make music, these are tools that really help it. If you don't have that stuff, for sure, yes, you can record like anything, with anything, sorry. So you can record with the Mac microphone on your MacBook. You can record with AirPods, or you can actually use the output sound of your MacBook Pro speakers too, or just the computer speakers. Again, that's base level. Anything you add from there will just help. Our tools to help you out, to help you make better quality music. Now, last thing here is how do we connect this MIDI controller? So a MIDI controller is just a keyboard. It's a plastic keyboard, and all it does is control things in Logic. So when I was clicking the software track and I pressed Y to open up the library, and I had this buzzy pluck sound. Okay, so with this buzzy pluck sound, let me just solo it up so you can hear it. So with this buzzy pluck sound, I can actually play this on my MIDI keyboard just because it's connected via USB. So it's as simple as that. Just connect your MIDI controller via USB into your computer, and you're ready to go. As soon as I start choosing any instrument, I can play it with my MIDI keyboard. I want to mention one thing that's just cool, something you won't have to do as a beginner, but it helps kind of it helps you learn what a MIDI controller can do beyond just triggering sounds. It can actually control things in Logic, like this volume fader here. So if I go, you see this inputs track. I have my hands here, but I'm actually going to go down here and just touch a fader. I'm now, and I'll make a video of this and overlay it so you can see, but I'm just touching the fader on my MIDI controller, which is actually controlling the fader, the volume. So it gives you this tactile feel that you can do with a MIDI controller that can control things in Logic. Okay, so let's talk about capturing the magic now, recording some vocals, the guitar, and instruments. Now, we're preset up now with our interface, so we should be synced up and ready to go. As to lay this lesson out a little more, to make it a bit more interesting, let's take the drummer track that we added in the previous sections. Let's customize it using our editor window and controls window a bit, and then we'll record a piano part or synthesizer part, and also we will record a little vocal idea and a guitar part over it. Let's just pop this over a little bit more to the right, just so we have some breathing room there at the beginning. I don't like to have things hugged against here. That's just a personal preference. I'm going to turn the cycle, this thing on by pressing C, and then I'm going to drag it over just so we can loop that section so I can hear it again. And I can just press spacebar to audition or hear the sound of these drums. All right, let's get into the editor window by pressing here. You can also press E to open that up from the bottom. And I will add some complexity. I will take away some intensity. And I'm going to click these drop downs here to find a new pattern for the hi-hats. That's what this symbol is. And to find a new pattern here for the kick and snare, which are really important elements to the drums. So let's first work on the hi-hat sound. There's 4 different options I can choose from. The current option that's selected right now that we just heard is option 2. So let's see option 1 and just filter through some of them to hear what that sounds like. And if you can hear this click in the background, that's the metronome that's happening, which is this purple button. You can click that off. I like to click it off when I'm listening to drums, or you can have it on. I think it can be distracting though with drums. So just press K. If I press K on my keyboard, this goes on and off. So I'm going to have it off to now. And what I'm looking for here is really just a subjective personal taste on what I think sounds good and how I want to develop this little idea that we're creating. When you hear those fills at the end, I find those a bit distracting, so I'm going to lower the fill amount just to make things a bit cleaner, to almost 0. I'm not a huge fan of the fills, so I'm going to lower that, and I'm going to lower the fill complexity. Okay, so now that we have the simple drum sound that is, we're not diving too deep into it, but we're just giving us something of a foundation to record over, I can start adding my piano or any other software track that you desire here. So I have the drummer track soloed, and now I have the software track soloed. That's not completely necessary, but it's just a workflow that I think I've built. So I can leave the solos off for now. So I'm going to just choose a piano. I'm kind of boring like that, so I'm going to go back to piano and just choose songwriter piano. I'm going to play a very simple chord progression over just playing my MIDI keyboard. I'll probably do something like an A minor. Oh, lost my slipper. And I have a sustain pedal under my desk, which you can't see, but I can press the sustain pedal so it gives me that realistic feel like a piano. So I can do A minor. Okay, so if we want to have a go at that, I basically have to consider 2 things. Obviously, am I hearing sound out of the MIDI controller? I'll press R to arm the track that it's ready to record. I will look at the cycle option here. Okay, are we within the range? Is that what we want to record? Yes, it is. So all I have to do now is press R on my keyboard or press here. It's going to give me a 4-beat count in 1, 2, 3, 4 record. That's going to happen because I have this 1, 2, 3, 4 option on. If you right click this and you want a 2-bar intro, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 record, you can have 2 bars, you can go up to 6 bars. 1 bar is enough for me, and I'm going to play that A minor, F, C, and G. And you'll notice that when I play these chords on my keyboard, it's saying the chord here, which I think is really cool in Logic. And it's gotten me to play actually some interesting chords. Like that's just your standard A minor chord, but I can, you know, I don't know what that is, but that's an A minor major 7th chord. I'm just playing something else. A minor added flat 9. You can actually learn music theory like this in Logic, but I'm just going to keep it basic right now and record that in. So I'll have to click on. Actually, I have to click off because we're using drums, and I'll record that in. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have our piano in there now. We can listen back right away, see how that sounds. And for the purpose of not getting in too deep right now, we're not going to edit the piano software recording. We'll do that later as we talk about editing, and then we'll go through editing the vocal and editing the guitar as well. I've noticed some areas just there that we can improve, but let's leave it like that for now and then talk about editing later. So let's record a guitar part. So let's start from scratch. Let's go to a track, new audio track, and we'll double click this track and put electric guitar. We can unclick the R on the software to not arm that as recording. And now we just have to think from the section before this, okay, where is my electric guitar plugged in? I know from my system here that it's plugged into the 2nd channel. So what do I have to do here? I go to input 2, right? So I need to link those up. Now I can press record enable, and it's listening. It hears my, oh, sorry. Actually, the guitar is in input 1. So I'm glad I checked that. So I'm changing that back to input 1. I'm going to grab my guitar. And I can take a strum here. You can see, take a strum. You can hear the guitar come out. You can't actually hear it because it's not picking up the audio very well here, but you can see the meter on the electric guitar. Watch as I strum it. Just look at the meter here. You see how it's coming up and then it's saying -6.4. And if I strum a little bit harder, it will bump that number up maybe to -2 or -0. So this is called your peak value, which is really important when you're recording audio. Not so important when we were doing drums or software here because that was software. Now we're talking about audio, so it has an added dimension of complexity when you're recording. And this added dimension is, we need to know, we need to set the amount of volume or gain that we're adding into Logic. So we need to set the peak value. If I strum very quietly, it says -17 here. So that means that in decibels, I'm reaching -17 in decibels to record, and that would be too low. So you don't have any context, right? So you're like, okay, well, what's the right amount? And a safe amount would be aiming for that -6 to -8 range, which gives you enough volume where you could increase it later, but it also doesn't put you in a zone where if you go really loud and you get it yellow here or red, this is also known as peaking. If you do that, then you risk losing quality in your recording, and actually those are bad things to have in your recording. So you don't want to have it too hot. This is also known as too hot. When it gets yellow or red, you want it to be in that sweet zone of like -3 is okay, but you're touching in that area of it, like maybe being dangerous. It does come back to the dynamics of the guitar player or the singer. So as the guitar player, I know my part that I'm going to play over here is just a it's not super dynamic. I'm not doing like a quiet part and then a really loud part, because that would change how you are setting the gain. So it's the dynamics of the guitar player, but also the gain you set on your interface. So if we bring this interface back up here, we have these dials here and here. They're out of focus now, but they're just dials where you can consider them like volume dials, which increase the amount of gain or volume that is in a recording. So if you find that like you're playing really loud and your recording is still, the meter here says like -19 and you can't get it any louder, that means you need to increase the amount of gain that the signal is being boosted into Logic with the interface. So you need to actually increase that volume on the interface to get it to that -6 mark. So let me do that now. Let's get the sweet spot of the gain. So I'm playing like as I would in the recording, and it's a bit low. So I'm going to go to my interface here and turn that up. Okay. I'm playing the same. Now it's at -11. I'm going to increase it a bit more. Now it's at -9, -8. I'm just going to increase a little bit more. Now it's -6. That's safe for me. And now I'm going to lay this in. So I'll press C to cycle it. And little tip here, I don't actually have to move the playhead over like this. I can keep it there and just press R. Because I have the 1, 2, 3, 4 button on, Logic is just going to know to bump the playhead back 4 beats and then get me into the recording. So I'm record enable here. I got the channel input set up. I got the gain. Now it's the time to just like focus in on the recording and spend the time getting the proper recording. And I will just press R on my keyboard when I'm ready. And we'll have a go. Cool. So there's a recording, and it looks visually like the signal wise, this white stuff, this is all the guitar, and that looks healthy to me. It doesn't look small. It doesn't look bad. These are 2 other examples I just added here that should be a concern to you if your instruments or your audio looks like this. So this one here, where you can barely see any of it, this means that you didn't increase the gain enough to get a healthy signal. And this one here is just way too much. It's distorted and it's way too much gain. So you lower the gain or you fix your playing a little bit so it's not as distorted. Okay, so let's just erase those for now. And now we have our guitar recording. So let's now add a little vocal idea, and then we will come back on making this come more to life, but we're really just focused on like how do we get recordings out right now. The polish, the cleanliness, the timing, and that type of thing we're going to work on later. So when we're recording vocals, very similar process to as we record a guitar, because the signal chain is more or less the same. We will let's go to our inputs track here that we have at the top, and let's change this, double clicking here, and change this to a vocal. Now, I know in my case here that the vocal is actually an input 2. So I'm going to go to up here and go input 2. And now I know that when I record enable, this microphone here is set up to record, and I could do the same thing that I did with my guitar to find the gain sweet spot to know, okay, am I recording enough signal in my vocal that it's going to sound, that it's going to be okay to work with in Logic. We're preparing the ingredients to work with in Logic. At the end of the day, Logic is just a tool to capture sound. It helps us organize that sound, add effects, polish it, so we can take all those ingredients and then export a song. That's really what it is at the end of the day. So we need to prepare our ingredients right now. I'm going to press record enabled. You can see as I go over here, and I speak it to the microphone, it has a -14 peak value up here. So I'm going to increase the gain a little bit. So increase the gain as I speak louder. You can, or as I speak the same but increase the gain, you'll notice that this gets louder. It's a -7, and then now I'm speaking the same volume, and it's really, really hot. Red, 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 hot. And that's way too loud. So I gotta actually figure out a song, not a song, but a part to sing over this. So let me press play to just listen to it. So I'm gonna hum something over it. So I'm gonna hum right now the part to set the gain. So la da 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 da, la da 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 da. -6. I'm not going to kind of go over that, so I'm okay with recording at that volume, and then I'll record the part in here. One very important tip that I just forgot to explain or even do, and I'm just getting so into this tutorial, is you need to wear headphones when you're recording vocals. Not so much guitar, because the guitar doesn't have a microphone that can pick up sound, but what's happening here is as I record this audio, the sound is being played out of my speakers, so the sound out of my speakers is being picked up by the microphone too. So to circumvent that, you just have the sound to be played in your headphones, and then you record in the microphone. But if you're going to do this, just make sure you turn down the volume in your speakers. So I'll erase that recording. I just clicked it and pressed delete. And now I can do this again, but I'll turn the headphone volume down, or headphone volume up, and the speaker volume down. So recorded a very short vocal part. I'll extend it later and maybe even add some lyrics to it so we have a bit more context, something more realistic. But let's have a listen. I'll press solo so we can hear what that sounds like. A bit cringy for me. Da da da, la da 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 da. Okay, so actually, what I could do, because it's only 4 bars, I could actually copy and paste this same block, and I know it's the same chord progression, so I can copy and paste that block to the next section as well, and it would work. So what I'll do here is I'm going to click this region. Instead of doing like Command C, Command V to copy and paste something, which you can totally do, but a faster way to do that is clicking the region itself, holding Option on your keyboard, clicking, and a little plus button pops up there. So I'm going to now just keep holding Option, and I'm holding that click. I'm just going to drag over, and then I'm going to let go of the click, and then I've made a copy. So now I have the same vocal part here and here. Again, I'm not worried too much about the sound of it yet, because we're really just talking about, as beginners, how do we capture sound? Electric guitar, vocal. If you want to record your acoustic guitar with a microphone, you would do the same thing as I just did with a vocal, but you'd properly set up the acoustic guitar. If you want to record a stereo acoustic guitar, you could do something similar. but you would need another microphone. Stereo recording would be using 2 microphones. If you want to record your amplifier, I have an amplifier, a Fender Princeton amp here. If I wanted to record this, I could set up a microphone right on the speaker and record the sound just like I did with my vocal, but recording with the amp. And then you get into the discussion of like, okay, what microphones do you use? What microphone placements do you use? And that's another whole other rabbit hole. But the fundamental is the same here. Okay, now let's get into the next section where we'll extend this song a little bit more by using different session players, which is a new feature in Logic, and more software instruments. Cool, so let's dive into exploring software instruments, but specifically exploring some of the new AI features that come for free in Logic. Logic is built by Apple, and they were really pushing it in terms of adding in different AI tools to help you develop your skill set to make a song. One of the 2 biggest new tools that they've added in the last year or so is the Logic AI Stem Splitter, which in short takes a song, so any song download that you have, and it will split up the instrumentation. So specifically, it will take the vocal and grab it out, so you just have the vocal part. It will grab the drums, it will grab, I believe, the bass, and then the instruments. The thing is, you need the most recent, you need an M1 computer. I'm still on an old i9, top of the line computer back a few years ago, so I don't have access to it. It's one of the reasons I'll get an M1 chip soon, because I think it's a really, really important feature. I'll get into why a bit later. And you'll notice I talk a lot about it on my channel. So the other tools are, AI tools, are the Session SI track. So let's dive a little bit deeper, because you don't need an M1 chip to use these. So we'll add a new session player SI track, and you're going to see it gives us 3 options. A drummer, which we've already explored, but you have a bass player and a keyboard player. So let's add both. We're going to add a bass player track here, create that. So it's called Simple Foundation. I'm just going to rename it bass. And then I'm going to add back up here, track, new session player SI track. Notice on all the ends of the menu here, we have the shortcuts for everything. So the shortcut for this would be, this is Command Option U. So I can go, that's Option Command U, and it gives me, and I can click keyboard. Using just getting to know the shortcuts slowly over time is really going to help develop your speed and confidence. It's a really big game changer. I'll rename the Studio brand to keyboard. And let me just show you the power of these AI players as I move them over. And I'm just going to solo, because everything is a bit washy and not polished or mixed yet, I'm just going to play it over the drummer. So I'm going to solo the drummer. I'm going to solo the bass. And I haven't done anything to this bass track yet. It's really just taken what it knows from my session, which is pretty crazy. So let's just have a listen to what this bass sounds like out of the box. So not interesting. Obviously, there's a bass there, but it's not interesting. It's not following my chord progression. So because I had this chord progression of, A minor, F, C, G, I'll add my software piano in there, just so we can have some type of harmony to follow along with. And then I'm going to click on the bass player here and open up the editor by pressing E. Again, if this stuff is like too fast, too slow, just slow it down. Take it step by step, and just be easy on yourself, because it's a lot I'm throwing at you. So take your time to really pause, rewatch from the beginning, catch up here, and practice it like that. This stuff, if it comes easy, great. If it doesn't, just go take it easy. Okay, so you can see here we have our bass pop songwriter down here. Very similar layout to like what the drums look like. So we can now choose a type of chord progression. So I'm going to go to this number 1 here. And you see how it gives me 5 different options of pattern playing. But I want to follow the rhythm of a specific track. So I'm going to click on this off drop down here, and I'm going to go to my software track, which I should really name it piano at this point, right? So I'll do that now to make it clear. Double click software. I'll type in piano. I'll go scroll down, click on my bass track, and then I will go back to this pop-up here. Now you can see it says piano. So let's just have a listen now to that. Actually, let's develop it a bit more. So melody, let's do some notes. I don't really know what I'm doing here, but other than I'm just testing some things. Octaves, some, phrasing, medium's good. Lowest note, I'll leave it at that. I'll bump up the complexity. I don't really want any fills. I don't really need any swing. So out of the box, let's hear what that sounds now. So that sounded bad. You know why it sounded bad? And I already told you this. It's because it's taking the key of the song from our display window. And I ignored my first rule already. So these things will catch you, but it's good that we kind of troubleshoot now as they're catching me. So I'm in the key of A minor. So I'm going to switch this to A minor. A minor. And now, do you want to transpose codes on the chord track or session player regions? Yes, definitely. So notice when I change this to A minor here, these things popped up, these notes. So if I click down this drop down arrow, this will be something you might want to come back to because there's going to be a few steps here that you're going to need to follow. Let me click this drop down menu and I'll see that, okay, I'm in signature 4/4 A minor here. And then these are the chords that they suggested, I guess. I'm going to click this and drag over so that I can tell Logic now, okay, my bass track needs to follow the same chords as this chord progression. However, it's the wrong chord progression, so I'm going to need to double click and just choose this as, this is when, if you know theory, it will come in handy because I believe you can do this faster, but I'm just going to go, I know the first chord is A minor, so I'm just going to go A minor, A minor. The second chord is a F, F major. Third chord is a G, G major. Oops. And we just need to do this so when we're using the AI tools. You don't need to do this if you're not going to use these AI tools. And then C, A minor, F, G, back to C. I believe that's what I did. It could be wrong, and I'll just change it. So now I can just delete these ones. Just by double clicking and deleting them, but I also believe you can probably hover over the right side here and drag it in. Logic is pretty smart. So there we go. Just clicking that, dragging it in, and letting go. Okay, I did make a mistake. It was A minor, F, C, G. So when we have your chord progression, you can just do the Option click command to copy that over to the same progression because it's the same thing. Now the bass knows, okay, we're doing A minor, F, C, G. Okay, I'll play appropriately to that. So when we press play now, the bass will at least sound right. play the keys as well. So I'm soloing the bass, the drummer, and the piano. So bass is there, it's working, and now you can just click it, press E to open up the editor, and find a different rhythm by using the 5 options here: the complexity, the intensity, fills. You can add your own manual pattern if you know how to draw it in. And you can change the player as well. So we're now on pop songwriter. You could have more of a modern feel, pop rock feel, which will change the sound of the bass. So pretty cool. Like, these are your own AI session players that you can use in your tracks if you're not a comfortable bass player. Same thing with the keys. It's following the same fundamental, which is looking at the chords. Let's open the keyboard player, open up the editor by pressing E. We can find a rhythm we like. We can play left hand or right hand or both hands, complexity, intensity, type of keyboard player. You can change the voicing in the left hand, the voicing in the right hand, the movement, the fills. So you can get pretty detailed in terms of like trying to recreate the setting as if you were in the room with a session player and they were playing something and you're like, less left hand, or make it, can you play eighth notes and be more busier in the right hand and hold it in the left hand, the bass. You can do stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Let's have a listen to just out of the box how that feels with, let's just listen on its own for a second. Pretty good. It sounds better than me, that's for sure. If we had the bass, drums, we'll leave out my piano now. So really, this is just AI right now. Now, yes, this sounds stock, doesn't really sound authentic, but is very cool how we can use these AI tools to get ideas or to use as foundational starting points that we can add on or edit or critique, or not critique, but to really to add on and develop an idea from. It's pretty powerful stuff. Okay, so that's session players. Now, so we have software instruments here, that we've explored, and we'll dive actually a bit deeper into in a second. We have session players, which are the yellow things built by AI, and then we have Apple loops, which are on the right-hand side here. So, like, now that we know we're in A minor, it might be a good idea just to search by that. So we can search by, actually, I don't think you can search by the key. You can search by scale, but what I can do is filter by pressing the key box, and I'll just scroll down to where A minor is. And then actually I might do something like, is there any, let's see, what would we want to add to this song? Could there be an organ for fun? Let's scroll down to A minor and see if it fits. Now, these are loops, and I'm just going to play one to see, so you hear what it sounds like. Sorry about that. So as you can hear, these loops, they're not going to fit in this song, right? But some might, and it does take time to go through these. It's almost like it's a bit of like a necessary evil to do this stuff, because it's like you might find a gem, which is the necessary evil part, where it could just make your song, but then it just might take you way too long, and you might come out of it with nothing. So what I find helpful when you're going into the Apple Loop library is to have a purpose of what you're looking for. If you're just going in open-ended, then just understand that you could be there for a while listening to stuff and not really getting anywhere. if you already have a progression and something, I find it harder to tack on loops. If you're starting fresh, loops are a good starting point to start a brand new song. The power of loops and Apple Loops is it's not just audio. So for the purpose of you just understanding loops, let's drag in 3 of the styles of loops. So we have audio loops that look like this, blue audio, like that looked like the guitar vocal that we recorded. We have MIDI loops, which look like the software piano we recorded. And then we have the drummer loops, which look like the session players we recorded. So all of these here are, again, editable, where you can dive in. I can open this classic electric piano. I can open the editor by pressing E, and I can click MIDI notes and edit them. We're going to get into editing MIDI in a little bit and doing more of this, but just this is a window for you to understand and to open if you have that capacity already or that knowledge to do this. And then same thing for drummer, this track here. And look, it's come with its own progression. This probably this, I guess, classic electric piano. It's come with the GDCA7 GD. So it comes with that data. That's kind of cool. And you can edit that to be like, if I don't like some of these notes, as a rough example, I could just edit these notes and play it back and it can sound different. So Apple Loops, great starting points, more difficult to tack on elements, I find, when you already have a song maybe halfway, or you already have a vision for your song and you know what you want to record. Other than that, you can look in the Apple Loops for different effects and things like this. For example, sound effects or impacts or things. These are words that like you might use to develop a transition or a moment in your song to develop drama, let's say. Something, I can show you an example. Or impacts here, this is something. Not that you would have something like that. It's not a great example, but maybe something more even a vocal effect sounds cool sometimes. Like I could hear that maybe in some song, adding some effects and making it sound a bit cooler than that, but we're not there yet to explain how you might achieve that sound. But it's more the idea of like, these are tools that Logic gives you to develop your song. The one downside is it just takes up a lot of time to go through here. And if I'm being really, really honest with you, it's not something I do a lot in my productions to go through Apple Loops. Instead, I would use a third-party library, which I'll discuss again in a little bit, but it's something to mention because what I like to do, like what I like to kind of think about the Apple Loops is it's free and there is some gems in there, but there is a lot of like bad stuff too that does take time to get through to find the gems and the good stuff. The alternative there is paying for something where most of the gems are all up front and you don't have to go through a lot of the bad stuff. Okay, so if we have that foundation like we do with these tracks, we have some AI-driven tracks, we have our electric guitar, our own piano, and our vocal. Let's get rid of these 3 tracks. I can click one, hold Shift, and click the last one here to highlight them all. And then I can go Command Backspace to delete all those tracks at once. So if we have that foundation, we can use software instruments to layer and add texture to our sound using the chord progression we have. So we know we're in A minor, F, C, G. And we know we have our recording of this piano here already, right? So what we can do, if we have this recording down, we can audition other sounds using this chord progression that we have. So one technique that I do often to find if a sound might be worth exploring within the context of the song is to duplicate this track by going Command D. And so we'll have like experimenting soundtrack, okay? And now we will duplicate the software of this track here, this green region, by holding Option, clicking, and dragging down. Again, it's holding Option, clicking, and dragging down. So let's solo it out the experimenting track, and then we just go over to our software library. We can press Y if that's not open. And we can just go through different instruments from guitar. Like this will literally try to play a classic clean guitar sound. You know, it's not sounding great because a guitar is difficult to translate in software. So, but let's try something maybe like strings, studio violas. That could be more interesting. So that's using exactly the same thing I played with the piano, obviously just a different sound. So this should be clicking for you that MIDI data, these MIDI notes, these little white things, white lines, are just information things and data that trigger any sound in the world. I literally could send you this MIDI file and then you could play any sound that you want in the world with it. It's the form, it's the language of MIDI. And it's something that you need to know that now I can edit this MIDI. I could change a MIDI sound, and this goes to the same thing for drums. Okay, so powerful knowledge there. Let's say I don't like the strings. Let's say they just sound too high. So if I want to lower the strings, something quickly I could do there is actually just transpose this entire thing down. So I can do Shift, Option, down arrow, and notice how it says -12. So we'll do that again. Let's just look here, Shift, Option, down. It says -12. So I've shifted this entire MIDI octave down a full octave. So it's going to sound a lot lower now. To me, that sounds more rich. As a producer and as someone building a song, my headspace here might be like, well, okay, maybe I'll edit the MIDI and take out some notes because it's sounding busy. Maybe I will add my other tracks in so I can listen in context with things. Does the strings do they sound like they're fitting with this vibe of track? Or especially in this octave range? If not, let's audition other sounds. So it's this style of thinking that you can take into your own process. So for fun, let's have a listen to how the strings sound like with our AI tracks, our guitar, and our piano. And then if it doesn't sound good, we can switch it out. Yeah, that doesn't sound good right off the bat. And you know why? Look what's happened up here with our chord progressions. So we'll need to bring this A minor F C G over. So we'll delete that and we'll just copy that over because our AI chords there have changed. I could hear that right away. All right, let's have a listen now and just bear with me here to how bad or good this sounds. Less worse than I thought it would sound. Key thing here is, and the strings actually don't sound terribly bad. So what's wrong with this? One, sounds a bit unauthentic. Two, bit stock, and 3, everything is just clashing. There's so much sound and things are kind of on top of each other, and there's no real priority in terms of what's happening. So I want to introduce one technique that you can slowly develop as you start adding tracks in Logic. And we're going to really talk about mixing here a little bit, because mixing is, as a fundamental, is something that you might do near the end of a process to really make things balanced and cohesive. But it's also something that you can do up front while you're adding tracks and producing a little bit, just so that there's some type of direction and priority with your tracks. Or else we're just going to get a wall of sound like this. And so what I mean by this is literally just using volume right now, only volume, back to these faders here. Or if you'd like to press X and open up your mixer, and you get the same idea with using these faders here. So it just means balancing volume, meaning some things should be turned down and some things should be turned up. But what we can do, and a technique that you can do to start, is just to lower them all down to 0. So I can highlight them all here, and I'll bring one fader all the way down to 0. So when I play like nothing, we're going to hear nothing, right? Obviously. But what we can do is just build one up at a time with volume, and then build everything around that. So if you think of a pyramid, like what's the most important? What's the thing, what should we build at the top? And then maybe not so much a pyramid, but just think in priority. Like, since we don't have our vocal in yet because it's not polished yet, let's work things around the drums. So what I'll do is I will play the track and I will slowly mix things around the drums. So that's how loud the drums are. I'm going to bring the bass in, the keyboards, and the guitars. And I'm just going to do this quite quickly in my head. I'm just thinking, how loud now should the bass be in terms of the drums? And I'm mixing it in subjectively to how I think. So just a simple volume mix, right? And it sounds better for sure. It's still not an amazing track. This goes back to the fundamental knowledge tip there, which is ingredients coming in needs to be top quality to have your sound be top quality at the end. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about editing MIDI notes, which is something you will need to get comfortable with, especially working in software like Logic or any DAW, because so much about modern production and making music in your home studio is about working with MIDI and programming MIDI. So it's really something, it's a language you need to get comfortable with. So again, MIDI is something that you input into Logic through playing on a MIDI keyboard. You can draw in MIDI notes, which we will do. And yeah, it's a language. So let's look at our strings track here. We can rename this now. It's no longer experimental, but it's just strings. And if we open up our editor, we can now take a kind of bird's eye or microscopic, I guess. It opens up a microscope under on MIDI notes here. So just like I can scroll up here, I was showing you at the beginning, I can do the same thing in this zone. So I can get a better view. If I find I'm too zoomed out, I can do something more like this. Now, if we click on a MIDI note, we'll get a preview of what that sounds like. And I can click a note at any time and delete it by pressing backspace, or I can add a note at any time by penciling it in. So what I mean by penciling it in is using the tools that we have available to us here. So these three tools, like a pointer, this is a pencil, and this is a V. You can click these and change them, but there's three tools here, and then there's three tools up here. These are mutually exclusive, so they're not connected. Now, the second the tool here on the furthest left is your left click tool. So anything you click with your mouse on the left click, that's what that is. The next tool here is the command click tool, which means whenever you hold command on your keyboard, you get the tool that's selected here. So it's a pencil. So I can hold command to get a pencil. And then with a pencil, you can draw notes in. So I can click on here, and now I drew a note. And great. Is that the right place for the note? No. So I have to click and drag this note over. And if the preview there is annoying you, we can click this off, this green thing, which turns off the preview. Now I can click notes and not have them sound, which is sometimes helpful. And then I could bring that note down to where I want it to be. If you want to do this on your keyboard, you can actually hold Option and just go up and down on your keyboard, and that will bring the notes like that. Again, you know how I shifted this down by -12? I can also do the same thing here. If I go Shift Option, I can bring this whole note down by an octave or raise it up by an octave like that. So important shortcuts to remember. So that's just adding and deleting notes. Now, you will have to have the knowledge, or at least the understanding to, like, you can't just click notes anywhere and have them sound good, right? This involves music theory and how chords are created and what notes are in chords. So that's not something I will dive into in this video, but if you're looking to, this is an A minor chord, so if you're looking to add to an A minor chord or to take away from an A minor chord to make it sound more interesting, you need to know how to do that, and that involves learning a bit of music theory. The next big thing with editing MIDI, and let's stay inside the strings here, is quantizing MIDI. And this is really important because quantizing means timing, and it's defined by, like, not defined by, but quantizing means like putting your instrument in time. So these strings are kind of placed as how I played the piano because I just copied that MIDI data over. So I would like to quantize these strings to have them very locked in on the grid to show you what that would look like. So what does that mean? It means that, let's just take these first 4 bars here to focus on, bar 9, 10, 11, and 12. That means that since I'm playing whole notes, which means I'm playing the chord on the downbeat of the first bar. So that means I'm playing a chord on bar 9, I'm playing a chord on bar 10, I'm playing a chord on bar 11, and I'm playing a chord on bar 12. But that means that if I want to quantize these notes to 100% strength, that means that these MIDI notes will land 100% on that 9, 10, 11, and 12 grid. And I'm going to zoom in here on bar 9. I'm going to put the playhead here. You can see these notes are before bar 9. That means my playing as a human, I played a little bit before the beat. And this is often natural for some people. I usually play a little bit before the beat. Not a lot, you can see, but it's not, it's played a bit rushed, you could say. So how do I quantize this? Well, I could just single out the notes and move them all over like this. That's one, technically what we're doing. Like, this is the outcome that we want to get. But just let me undo those, and I'll show you the faster way to do it. I'm going to highlight this chord, and I'm just going to go over down here to this drop down, time quantize, and they're going to a whole note. And now they've all snapped to the nearest whole note, which is on bar 9. So if I undo that again, I can do the same thing. Instead of just highlighting this chord, I can highlight all of these. Now, I'm going to show you one thing that will happen. So, you see these notes over here? I did kind of like a quarter note, or more of an eighth note added push there. So I'm going to highlight all of them and I'm going to quantize them all by a whole note. And they're all going to be locked in except those two notes here that I want to be there, but these are going to actually snap, I believe, to probably bar 13. Let's see. Yeah, so I don't want that to happen. I want this to happen. Look, all these notes are correct. All these notes are correct. 11 is good. 12 is good. But these notes got shifted over there, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so if that happens to you, it's not that big of a deal because you can always just undo Command Z, or you just turn Quantize off, and it goes back to what you had. So what I have to do here is actually I want to quantize by 1/16th note. So watch what happens here. So everything shifted to the nearest 1/16th note. And I know I could do that because I've played, and as I'm explaining all this, I realize this is complex for those not hearing this before, especially if you don't have the understanding of notes here. So what that means, though, let's dive in on bar 9 again. Let's undo that. So you see this line here before it, and this line. So we have bar 9 and this line before it. This is a 16th note, I believe. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, this is a 16th note, meaning that between bar 8 and 9, there are 16 of these gray lines here, signifying a 16th note. So if I quantize this chord by a 16th note, it's going to snap to the nearest 16th note, which happens to be bar 9, because it's closest to bar 9, not to this bar before it, or this bar. It's closest to bar 9. So again, highlight and quantize, which will lock it into the value. So you might be asking yourself, well, then why, when you chose a whole note, why does it go to bar 9 as well? Because bar 9 is a whole note. I can even actually go by an 8th note, and because it's also the nearest 8th note. So without confusing yourself, a rule of thumb where you can take from this is, if your playing is from the keyboard is more or less fluid and in time, you might be a little bit before the beat, you might be a little bit after, you can count on just quantizing by a 16th note, and it should lock things into place nicely with the style of playing. Take that. Now, if you know you're playing whole notes, I'm playing whole notes. Boom, chord, bar 9, boom, chord, bar 10, boom, chord, bar 11. I know that those are whole notes, so I know that if I just quantize by a whole note, it's going to lock it into the nearest whole note. I don't have to worry about it going anywhere else because I am playing whole notes. The thing is, though, you saw what happened here. This isn't a whole note playing. This is an 8th note or a 16th note. So if I do the whole note playing, I'm going to lose that. So I don't want to do that. You see what I mean here? If you know you're not playing, if you know you're playing whole notes, you can quantize by whole notes. But if you know you're not playing whole notes like this, if you have a busier pattern, don't quantize by a whole note because you're going to lose that. So if your head is hurting, that is normal. The thing here is just to be slow and take this one step by step and experiment and quantize and visualize here what's happening to the notes you've been playing. When in doubt, go back to a 16th note. If you mess up, just turn it off and start again. You have to highlight things and then turn Quantize off, and it shifts back to where you played it. So you're not going to mess anything up. So that's editing MIDI and quantizing MIDI. Now let's start a new software instrument from scratch, specifically the drums, or it works fundamentally the same for any instrument, right? Because MIDI is separate to sound. So what we can do is add a new software instrument. And I'm going to open the library by pressing Y, and I'm going to add a drum kit actually. So just a standard Brooklyn drum kit. And I'm going to solo it. Now, okay, so if I don't want to play the notes on my MIDI keyboard, if I just want to draw them in, where do I start here? Like, where do I draw? There's no green thing for me to draw here, right? So we need to actually draw a region in there. So what I'm going to do here is the simplest way, or maybe the most beginner way to do that would just be, again, change your command tool to a pencil, hold command and click in to get a region, and then you can extend it like this. This is like saying, like, okay, now we have a canvas where we can draw on. Before we didn't have that canvas. So now I can double click in to get the editor or press E. And I see, okay, cool, but now there's nothing here. I need to draw stuff. What do I draw? So zoom in on this keyboard to see what's in this instrument, to actually see the words. So you can actually just scroll down. Actually hold Option and scroll down. So by holding Option and scrolling down here we go. We got crash, ride, bell, edge, ride out, tom, high, crash, left. And all the elements, claps, snares, and kicks at the bottom. So from bar 9 to bar 12, or bar 13 rather, let's just program a simple beat in. And I know I can just add anything in by holding command again and clicking. So at this time, I probably want to hear what I'm adding, so I'm going to turn in the preview. And while we're at it, now that we're here, if you click on this is called MIDI In, the MIDI In button, which now kind of opens up the funnel, let's say, or opens up the pipeline to your MIDI controller. So if I'm on bar 11 and I just play something on my MIDI controller, like I just played that note right now. You see that? I'll do it again. Well, I guess you can't see my hands, but I'm going to go down to the kick. I just played the kick. See, I'm adding all these notes in by just pressing on the keyboard. So a lot faster, right, than drawing. And that's an option to do there as well. And you can do both in tandem if you're in this window. But just if this is on, that means the pipeline is open for your keyboard. So if you press stuff, you're going to be getting things in there. Now let's go back to just drawing a simple pattern here. So we have kick. We can do like a 4 on the floor kick. So it'd be something like kick, 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 kick. 4 kicks in one bar. And I can duplicate that again. We know how to do the Option click method like this. I can do the Command C method. Oh, that didn't work. So let me do that again. Option click. Hold Option, but let go of click. Another cool way to do that is actually just pressing Command R. So highlight 4 and just press Command R. And that duplicates another 4. So I'll do it again, Command R. So now I have a kick drum from bar 9 to 13. You can hear what that sounds like. Pretty basic, right? So now we can add a snare or a rim shot on every beat 2 and 4. Okay, let's say that's a bit too much for me. So I'm going to add the snare side stick. So I'm going to just click this and drag it down. And I'll add one on beat 4 here as well. I'll highlight both and I'll just do Command R again, which duplicates it. I'll do Command R again and Command R again. Now I'm going to look for a hi-hat closed, and I'm going to add an 8th note pattern. So that means 8 notes within the whole bar. So see how this is 4 notes? I just have to add an 8th note pattern. So I'm going to add 1 in with this appropriate 8th note and Command R, duplicate it, and now I can do Command R, Command R, Command R, Command R, Command R, all the way till the end. So this is going to sound super, let's say, static, because everything is now programmed in, meaning everything has the same velocity. So have a listen to what that sounds like. So it's cool, but it sounds a bit robotic, right? A bit static. So things we can do to increase maybe give some more human energy to it is to change the velocity of things. So every MIDI note in keys and synths and drums have velocity. Velocity is the strength of the note being played. So it can be soft or it can be hard. So notice how my third click tool here, I have a V. So that V is velocity. And that means if it's the third click tool, I can actually use it by pressing the right click on my mouse. So if I hover over this, press the right click, and I'm dragging down, notice how it changes color. Drag up, notice how it changes color. And notice this slider over here changes well. Left to right, the slider. And that's the strength of the velocity being played. So this note here, the velocity is being played at 68. The note beside it is being played at 93, and then the note beside it's at 93. All of these are at 93. So you can actually click and drag, one by one if you want, by sliding up with your velocity tool. You can click it and come over here and drag it. You can click multiple and bring the velocity down at once. What's another cool way to do it? Actually, another really cool way to do it, which is something I just thought of. And I'll do that right now to show you because I think it's just so cool. But I'm going to delete all of these. I'm going to add the paintbrush tool, which is another option you could consider. The brush tool when adding notes. It's similar to the pencil tool, but you can do it a bit faster actually. So if I hold Command, I got the brush tool, which means I can now brush notes across like this. But it will brush notes across depending on the first note that you create. So the first note I create here is a small 16th note. I don't want that. I want an 8th note. So I'm going to make it an 8th note. And now I can actually brush 8th notes. No, that didn't work. Come on. You know what? Actually, it's dependent on the quantize value. I forgot about that. So again, troubleshooting. So I changed that to an 8th note, and now I can quantize or draw in stuff. I can draw in toms. I can click again and erase those. But the cool thing there with Paintbrush, if you hold Command, you're going to get your brush tool. If you hold Shift as well, you can press in a note, and I can actually scroll down and up to change velocity while I'm scrolling down, scrolling up and down. See how I'm scrolling up and down and changing the color? This is a terrible example of, so let's do that again. I'll start off with a reasonably strong velocity at 50, let's say 98. Now I'm going to hold Command. I'm going to brush these other ones in, but I'm going to hold Shift. And as I move over to the right, I'm going to slowly decrease those velocities. Then I'm going to bring them back up. Decrease them, and bring them back up a bit. And that's not amazing, but it still gives a different feel. And you can see, and in a way, the more color your MIDI notes has, that means the more velocity that's being played. And more velocity doesn't always necessarily mean good, but it does mean that there is a bit more humanness to it. So now we can listen to these drums. a little bit more feeling in the hi-hats, the snare and kicks are a little bit the same as well. So we could do the same with our kicks and our snare side sticks here. So programming drums is the same as programming software. Again, we can just open up our library on this Brooklyn track, change the instrument to a synthesizer or a mallet or keyboard, let's say, to an 80s wave bells. And actually, if we play these MIDI notes in the 80s wave bells, it's going to sound pretty bad, but you'll get the point where it's actually just triggering sounds. Let's do that again so you can hear it. It's the same pattern as our drum tracks. We don't want that, but the idea is there where, like, okay, you know, now we're not choosing elements of a drum pattern. We have to draw in chords. So we can draw in a C major chord. Is that a C major chord? You know what I would do is I would go here. I'd have the pipeline open, and I just play the C major on my controller. And that should be way up here. Where is it? Pipeline's open. Oh, we probably have to record enable it. No, we shouldn't have to do that. It's weird. Weird. So now I could just draw a C chord in like this. Say I want to bring the pencil tool back in and not the paintbrush. So C, E. Notice as I hold it, you can see the pitch there, G1, at E1, C1. So that's a C chord. Again, they're all the same velocity here. If I don't like the octave, I can highlight them all. Go Shift Option up. Just brought those up an octave. And we can duplicate this track, or we can pipeline that the notes in, keep drawing the progression. So it's to see the actually it was an A minor, but whatever. Let's do an F or an A minor. A minor. And we just draw it in, you see. So just pipeline it in here because I find that easier. There's pipeline in. And then see how they've all come into separate time. So I can actually just click these now and highlight by a whole note because I want to go to bar 10. And I can click and drag these out. Now, the idea is the same there. I want to show you something cool here, which was mind-blowing for me, actually, when I first figured this out as a beginner. But there's these things inside software instruments called MIDI effects. So it's this thing right here. And but before we dive into this really, really cool thing, I just want to touch on one thing just because it's important. These are the default, obviously, plugins. I shouldn't say obvious, but some are on and some are off. The ones that are on are in blue. The ones that are off are in gray. These are just default plugins that Logic is saying this is what an 80s wave bells synth sounds like. we can open up the synth. You see how it says retro synth there? You can open that up and see the instrument, see the actual software that's being that this instrument is coming from, and then we can edit further here. This is overwhelming and can be intimidating for beginners. So, but it's a window there if you're interested in the stuff to explore. Now, the thing I wanted to really mention here is the MIDI effects, which you have different options of these tools that can change up the MIDI notes you play. And one thing is the cool thing is the arpeggiator, which really changes the sound. So this is an arpeggiator tool. And whenever you have windows that pop up like this, we just saw the retro synth window. Plugins will look the same. I can click on the middle of the Space Designer plugin, and you see how it's a window that pops up in Logic. So when these windows pop up, you always have this thing default preset up top where you can click, and then down here it gives you these preset effects that are helpful to start within this arpeggiator or within any pop-up plugin window you use. So you could choose one of these, like a triplet groove, let's say, which gives us now something to start with, which will actually change your 80s, these notes, 80s wave bells, into a triplet 16th groove. So have a listen to what that sounds like. I feel like I'm at a ball game, right? Okay, let's move on to editing audio now. A really, really important topic. Gonna keep it beginner level here. There will be some things that might seem overwhelming to you, but just stay with it. This stuff is super important to start bringing your tracks to life. But I will keep it. I will go slow and step by step here. So feel free to pause and come back to this as we reach some of the more technical stuff. So when it comes to audio, we have in this song, we have our vocal track and our electric guitar track. So let's I just clicked on that and brought it up to bring them together just visually so we can see it. The rest of this stuff, you can see I can click the S, drag down. The rest of this stuff here is just software, right? We're kind of done with that right now. We really want to dive into audio. Audio, the things you record, vocals, guitars, whatever, it's going to really make your song sound unique, authentic, and organic. And we kind of want that in today's world, right? With so much software that's already pumped into the song. So let's first talk editing audio. Now, just like we quantized our MIDI, we can quantize audio as well, doing something similar, looking at the 16th notes. It's similar. The fundamentals are the same. The thing, though, that just is the biggest difference between audio is because audio is actually like an analog source. It's more difficult to stretch and tweak because it's not just a data, a 1 and 0 really. Although we're transferring this analog signal into digital, it becomes more difficult to quantize audio and have it sound good. You of course can stretch it to the cows come home, but it won't sound great. That's why it's important that you record from the source to get a good timing of your recording and a good quality of the recording. It all comes back to the foundations of starting your ingredients, which is why it was important to record with a click or to record over a drummer track. So if we just listen to our guitar recording, super dry, meaning it has no effects on it. It's just kind of out of the box of what the electric guitar brings to the table. Couple elements could be a bit tighter. You can actually hear that better in reference to the drums here. So let me just play the first 4 bars. Hear the drums a bit better like this. So let me play the first 4 bars here. So what am I listening to there in terms of timing? Because this was something I struggled with at the beginning, when timing wasn't such a top of mind topic for me. But as you get better at guitar playing and you get better at producing, timing becomes so important. And it's really a big thing you do as the producer is to find timing of all your recordings and groove of all your recordings, just making sure everything fits. And timing is such a big part of that. So what I'm listening for here is really the groove of the guitar. It's doing ba da da ba 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 da ba da ba ba da ba da bum ba da ba da. That finger picking pattern, especially the notes that fall on the one, meaning the notes that fall on bar 9, 10, 11, 12 are locked into the kick drum. Because if we just listen to the guitar separately, as I did, and we don't have any benchmark of relative time here. But as soon as we bring in a click or a drummer track, since these are fully locked into time, we can see that the guitar needs to be shifted to work with the kick drum a bit more and to work with the snare drum. So now listening. This is subtle stuff, right? But it's picky stuff that you need to get good at the beginning. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginners make, is not having the timed audio tracks properly, or timed MIDI tracks too. So what are some things that we can do here? Now we can open up the editor of our electric guitar track by pressing E, and we can actually quantize this. So in audio, it does look a little differently. We have to turn on this thing here. It's known as flex. So do you want to turn on flex for the electric guitar? Yes. So what we can do here is quantize it. Now you can't do the 1/16 quantize here. You actually have to do it up in the region editor, which I was talking about at the beginning of the video. And so let's dive into this now. So you see how it says quantize? We're going to turn that on by a whole note. So what's that is doing is it's looking for something called transients, which are basically the parts of it's the how do I explain this in English? It's the hardest point, let's say, of the audio signal that has the strongest waveform, like this part here, even at the beginning, there's a little bit of one. Logic can identify transients, and that's why it's made these little gray bars on every transient where it thinks a new kind of note is being played or chord is being played. So when I say quantize by a whole note, it's essentially finding those transients and then shifting it to the nearest whole note. So stay with me here. I know this is getting a bit complex. The other thing you can do, because now take a listen, you're going to hear a little bit of artifact or changes in the quality of audio just from doing that quantization on the audio. Actually, it wasn't that bad. It did an okay job, and that's because the timing that I played is good. Now, because we shifted it in whole notes, there are some eighth notes in there that could be quantized. So let's go harder. Let's quantize by an eighth note and see what happens. Now let's listen. So actually, that's pretty much locked in now. And there's not many artifacts there. Artifacts, just think of it like messing up the sound where it sounds bad. It's not actually sounding that bad from the quantization. So that's something you could do, is just try to quantize in the region editor on your audio track. If it's really, really messing up the sound, revert back and maybe just try re-recording it in better time. Other things you can do, which we'll briefly talk about now, more of these tools up here, scissors, where we can actually just like cut things in this main region editor. When we have tracks, we can cut any of these tracks with scissors. because we can actually see here the audio, right? We can visually see like the beginnings of our notes. I can see the transients here, what I was talking about. And if you're having like a tough time seeing this, you could always go over here, click this, and this bumps up the waveform. It's not playing with the volume of it. It's just bumping up visually so we can see it a bit better. So I can actually cut. I'm going to make cuts by this is the right click tool. So I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to make cuts on each bar so you can see things a bit better. And I just wanted to do this so you can visually see, okay, my playing, let's go to bar 9. On bar 9, actually a little bit after the beat, I'm not too concerned about that. So let me go to bar 10. And I'm going to show you, you see how I'm zooming in really quickly, and that's cool. I'm going to show you how to do all this at the end of the video in the glossary of shortcuts. Don't want to diverge too much, but you can see here, okay, I made a cut on bar 10. I'm quite zoomed in here, so this is what's happening. I'm on bar 10, and I made a cut here. Now, the note is actually played here, right here. So this start of the note should actually be in bar 10. This is subtle stuff, but this is things you need to just, this is stuff to give you the foundation that you're going to need to get into later on. So what are some things I could do here? Well, watch when I drag this over. And now watch when I drag this over again. The data of the audio, you can kind of think of it, is saved within the drag, if that makes sense. So like I can actually delete this entire thing. Doesn't matter. I can actually take this and just drag it over, and I still have it there. So keep that in mind, because what I wanted to show you here is when I had that cut, I zoomed in, I actually want to bring, you know what, it's really not that bad. This is subtle stuff. So I might not change that at all. But now that I have a cut there, I will want to crossfade those. So another thing you should do is, when it's up here where it says drag, change this to crossfade. And this happens now when I drag this region into this, it's just going to apply a crossfade, which means an audio track will crossfade into another audio track, which means you're not going to have any pops or clicks that can mess up an audio track. So let's go to bar 11. Now, this note is played but a little bit before. So what I want to get across here is that you can cut your own regions and move them around freely. So I can cut here, and I can cut on bar 12, and I can actually move this around, looking at where the transients are and timing where I want them to be, like this. This is the method I prefer to do personally, because a lot of the time my playing isn't that badly out of time. So a little bit shifting here and cutting and crossfading sounds okay. If you're really out of time and you really chop it up and move things around, it's not going to sound good. Like, so at the end of the day, as you can tell up until this point, when you're working with audio, if you record something badly out of time, you can't really fix it that well in Logic, like you can in MIDI. Heck, in MIDI, you can record something so out of time, it sounds terrible, but then you just quantize everything and then it sounds perfect. It's not the same thing in audio. Okay, let's start taking a look at adding some audio effects. I'm just going to put my headphones on here just to dial in a little bit. Now, audio effects is a big world. So what we'll do to help you with your learning here is just to start with the presets, which I kind of prefaced earlier in the video, and then we'll actually develop a little bit of knowledge by adding 3 or 4 really, really important plugins that you should get familiar with. So first, presets. Now, let's stick on our electric guitar here, and then we'll also add some presets to a vocal. Vocals and guitars are probably the 2 tracks that you'll be adding plugins or at least presets to at the beginning, especially vocals. So let's start. The fundamentals are the same here, though. we're going to add an electric guitar plugin. So this track is a dry track. I mentioned that before in the video. And dry just means it doesn't have any plugins on it. It's the audio, whatever came into the computer. It's dry. So we can open up our library by pressing Y, and it will open up the preset window here, right, which we're familiar with from the beginning of the video. Now we can immediately go to the category that fits our stuff, which would be, it wouldn't necessarily be an acoustic guitar, although you could add these plugins. Let's see if there's something a little more in our area. Sorry, electric guitar and bass. So let's do clean guitar and see. We have a lot of options here. We can go to, let's do something. No, I don't know what any of these sound like. So it's literally a question of clicking on one and notice, and then actually listening back, but just notice what happened there when I click that. These blue things popped up. And the channel strip, this left side, looks a lot different, right? When I click big tube, it's going to change again. We'll go into something different. Bright and clean goes to something different. So they all just add preset plugins that make it sound like what we're going to listen to. So let's do Amazing Tweed and just have a listen to what this sounds like. So just let me zoom in and just fix that audio region just from before. Just going to drag that over and fade that in. So big and chunky type electric guitar, not necessarily something I'm looking for. I might try a Brit and clean, see what that sounds like. That sounds cooler to me. I'll go through clean echoes. At this point, your headspace should be like, okay, what sounds cool to you? What will fit in the direction of the song that you want to take? That sounds really nice to me, so I'll leave it at that. And then I could just move on from the song. The thing about presets are great for beginners. It doesn't necessarily teach you anything because it's just like doing all the work for you. But it is the quick win thing you could do just to get sounds going. But you should really, at the end of the day, as if you want to develop your production skill set, you should understand, okay, what is happening within these blue plugins here? You know, what is actually being done to them? Because eventually, you know, I would want you to just take this guitar as default with no plugins on it. Just click and drag down to turn them all off. And I want you to think like, okay, how can I develop this sound by adding plugins that we'll get into now? EQ, reverb, compression, distortion, amp simulators, all this stuff. Like you should have as a base knowledge to be like, I can pick and pull or pick and choose from these plugins to develop this sound. So just to give you a reference point here on this electric guitar plugin, it's added a noise gate plugin. I can click this and open it up. That's what a noise gate plugin looks like. It's added a pedal board, an amp simulator, a channel EQ, compressor, and a sample delay. So that's all cool and gravy, but really we want to learn now the fundamental plugins, which are EQ, compression, and reverb, which would be the three that you should get comfortable with. And by the way, I could totally go back to the library here. If I'm caught in this section, let's see, I can refresh the library. No. Let's go back here. All right, that's cool. I should mention that as well. I forgot about that. When you click on this little arrow here next to the plugin, see I'm clicking on pedal board, see I'm clicking on amp, channel EQ, you get the presets for the plugin. So it's kind of another level deeper. So in this noise gate plugin, or let's take the amp, it's more, you can hear it more. if I click this little arrow, then I get the library of presets for the amp. So that's the presets for the amp, this thing. And you'll notice that this drop down here, clean, crunch, and distorted, is the same as this one, clean, crunch, and distorted. So if we go for clean here, it starts with A-list, and it goes all the way down to vibrant tweed. It's the same thing over in the library A-list, all the way down to vibrant tweed. It's just a different way to get to that source. If at any time you want to like refresh the slate, you can go up to here where it says clean echoes, which is the preset, and you can go to reset channel strip. And that's going to get you to that base beginning where it's, you know, you can start back at adding the presets. And you don't just have to go into electric guitar. You can go into an acoustic guitar and add the sharp chorus preset to see what that sounds like too. Like that also sounds cool. It's really, you can go into experimental textures. You can add a bright vocal preset. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the team at Logic has developed these presets using actual audio, thinking that, hey, this would be the right direction that you should take it in. Okay, so let's reset this channel strip and then talk about EQ. So I've reset the channel strip. It looks clean. EQ is a plugin that you can add by pressing this little box, or to navigate to it, you can go to Audio Effects and it will be down in EQ, Channel EQ, and you can select mono. That's because this track is a mono guitar track. Now, you notice that now I have this like blue bar here, blue horizontal bar. That's the what is also known as the shape of the EQ, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But let's open the plugin by pressing the middle. And let's brush over what this is. This is going to be, if you're coming at this for a blank slate, just bear with me as we talk about frequency. So frequency being sound, and how we can use this plugin with the purpose of cleaning up or adding to our sound. So cleaning up would be taking away things in the guitar that just sound bad, let's say for simplicity purposes, or adding frequency to the guitar in areas where it might sound good, or in areas where we want to develop the sound, let's say, or make the sound more prevalent. So, you know, for beginners, where I'm talking about EQ, easy ranges to hear right away would be like low range. So think of an EQ here as like ranges, and we have actually 20. It's the number 20 here, and then 20K, so 20,000. That's like the frequency of sound that that gives us in this EQ, but it's actually sound that we can hear too. So, you know, hearing 20 hertz is like I don't even know if it's possible. I don't even know the actual, like, humans can only hear specific frequency ranges. You know, we're not like birds or animals where, you know, we all can hear different ranges. Like, I even think kids can hear different things than adults. So, for example, in that 15K, 20K range, if you have like let's say, for example, simplicity purposes, a whistle that has like a really, really high whistle, let's say a dog whistle, that is like 15K. So it's really in this range here. I might not be able to hear it, but a child might be able to hear it. Or let's say maybe a grandfather wouldn't be able to hear it, but I could. Everyone experiences frequency a bit different. So what I'm trying to get with this is just like, this is the sound we're hearing in all sounds. So listen and look, because it's, although I don't want you to get into the practice of looking at sound, it's helpful at the beginning to see the sound. So as I play this, this is the visual of the guitar here. We have these lines here. That's the actual sound of the guitar. So I can see this line here where it's 100 here. That's the low boom da da boom ba da boom da da boom da da. That's the low frequency that's really shining through. So bear with me here, but if I cut this frequency off, this is what also known as like rolling out or cutting off these lows. What do you think as I play this guitar? What do you think you're going to hear, right? You're not going to hear any of that line that comes up. You'll still see that line, but it's been cut off by this shape. So I'll take it off by turning the plugin off, listen to the guitar again. So really listen to that low guitar. Now listen back and try to notice the difference. Right? It's thinner. It's thinner. There's no low end. So fundamentally, this is called subtractive EQ. We're getting rid of frequencies at a very base level. Now we can do the same thing with the high frequencies. We can add a high frequency, a high cut, this is called, where we can take away high frequencies. And that would sound, obviously, there would be no high frequencies. So let's talk about bands now, because I've been adding these things and you're like, okay, what are these things you're adding? So inside this channel EQ in Logic, we have these different things at the top, like this looks like a fork and there's another fork over here. This one looks like an angle thing, and then this one's an angle thing. And then in the middle, we have these like bell-shaped curves ones. So what are these? They're just different options to draw shapes. So these angle ones I've added, this one and this one, and you click them to turn them on and off. And then we have these forks on the low and these forks on the high, also known as shelves. So you can take this fork here, turn it on. And it's orange, so we're going to bring this orange one here. You can shelf it up or shelf it down. We haven't talked about increasing frequencies, but just like I took away low frequencies, I could actually take this orange shelf and boost the low frequencies like this. So now it would sound really, really low. Why would you ever want to do something like this? You probably wouldn't want to do something like this, because let me explain. As you see here, in the bottom here, you see this like plus 16.4 dB. What this means is everything in this orange space here is technically, well, like at the peak here especially, is being boosted by 16.4 decibels. So that's a lot of volume, just you're increasing the volume at this specific frequency range. So that's going to sound really bad. I'm not even going to play that for you because it's going to distort. So you might necessarily want to do that, but maybe sometimes you might want to do something like this, where you're increasing it by 3, 4 dB or even 1 dB, where it's just subtle volume changes in specific ranges. So if you're like, oh man, this is just way too confusing, we're talking about like all these shapes and bell curves, and now they have a bell curve like this, you can increase or lower in different ranges. So what is going on, right? At the end of the day, when you're thinking of EQ, just think that it is volume. So EQ is volume. Okay, we're going to break it down super simple. EQ is volume. But it's volume in specific ranges. So you're just raising volume or lowering volume in specific ranges. That's it. You can go deeper than that by saying you're raising or decreasing volume with different shapes. A shape could look like this. A shape could look like this, or a shape could look like the red one here. And you can increase or decrease volume. It's just increasing and decreasing volume with different shapes in different frequency ranges. So why would you ever want to do this? Why would you ever add an EQ plugin? Only add an EQ plugin at the beginning. It will be difficult to understand, okay, why should I add an EQ plugin? But you want to think like this. So like, let's say you're adding a guitar track or a vocal track. You also can EQ. Same thing. What we're doing here, you do the same thing for software tracks. You know, it's the same thing. We're adding EQs. You think to yourself, is there anything in this track, for example, the guitar, that I don't like, or that's sounding bad or sounding too, you can use these English vocabulary words like muddy or boomy or harsh, or so I like the spiky one. And then you say, yes, there, it does sound a bit boomy. So your tool to remove the boominess is an EQ. The tool to say, if you have something harsh, the tool to remove that harshness is EQ. Because you're just saying, okay, in order to remove the harshness, I need to remove, lowering the volume, some frequencies in a specific frequency range. In order to remove the boominess, I need to lower the volume in a specific frequency range. Because, like, heck, if the guitar is too boomy, we could technically just take this volume fader and just turn down the entire track until we don't hear it anymore, and we could actually, that solves the problem, right? The point here, though, is you're turning all the frequency ranges down. You're basically, I'll show you, you're basically like, let's see here, taking these off. And you see this dial here, this is like this is just a volume knob, gain here, down here. Same thing. Increase it or lowering it. So basically, if I lower all this, it's the same thing as lowering the volume. It's the same thing. So now, like this, just think of this like as a big rectangular shape. So I can take these, instead of the rectangular big shape, I use different shapes to just carve out different ranges. Okay, I think I'm driving that home, and it should be clicking now if it's your first time learning about this. Okay, so give it a go. Like, just the best way to learn this is just add an EQ plugin like this, listen to your track, and first ask yourself, what do I not like? What sounds bad? It's going to be really hard at the beginning because you're like, well, it just sounds good. And you know why? Because you don't have any benchmark of like what sounds good or what sounds bad. So like, obviously it's just going to sound like okay because you haven't listened to a lot of sounds. Think about it. If you do something to it and you do that for a bunch of weeks, after a few weeks, you're going to listen to like guitars or something, and you're going to have some benchmark. You're like, well, the one I did last week sounded like this, and the one I did the week before sounded like that. And now I have kind of a benchmark of what sounds good and what sounds bad. So you need to build the time and the database, let's say, of like what sounds good and what sounds bad. And the only way to do that is to EQ more tracks and to listen to more things and to do more things like this. So it really is just the best advice to just get in there, add an EQ plugin, and start messing around with these shapes and seeing what it does to your track. So what would I do with this guitar? Bear with me here, but I'm going to cut a little bit of the lows like this because I do think it's a bit boomy. So let's have a listen here. It's like wondering why I can't hear anything because I turned all the volume down. And I'll just like lower this range a little bit by doing a shape like this. And let's say I want some more brightness, I could, in this area. This is also known as sweeping frequencies, which can be helpful, you know, because I'm increasing frequencies at this range, I'm at least identifying like, and if I'm playing the track and sweeping like this, I'm identifying, okay, what I'm hearing is this range, you know. If I'm over here, if what I'm really hearing is in this range, so like this. That brightness is what I'm hearing is in this range. The thing about sweeping is, though, it's going to sound kind of bad anyways because you're just increasing lots of volume. So just be aware of that. But it can help you identify the ranges. So I might want it to be a bit brighter in this range. So I might do something like that. And I just might move on from there, and I can always come back to it and fix it as I bring more instruments in, right? Because when you're in solo like this, when you're just listening to the guitar track on its own, it's difficult to know, okay, like what's happening in context with all your other instruments. So don't spend a lot of time overthinking the EQ too much, especially when you're in solo. Just maybe make some quick changes, move on, don't worry about it too much. A big part about music production and doing this is like moving quick and making decisions quickly, and because you're always going to be doing little things and coming back to it. Music production and mixing is just like thousands of little decisions, and you can think of it like that. You're always going to be tweaking and editing, but it's important not to like stick on something for so long. That's the advice I was given, and I think I would suggest the same. So for the vocal on the EQ, same thing. Add an EQ plugin, and so by just clicking on that EQ box here, so I can, to remove plugins, I can hold Command and get this little eraser and remove that plugin. That's a cool little trick, because I just want to show you, if you can just press this EQ box and it will automatically add the EQ plugin. And then I would do the same thing for the vocal, going at it like that. Let's move on now to talk a little bit about a reverb. So reverb, again, you can start with a preset, like a full channel strip preset that will have reverbs on it. Or let's go at it from the direction of like adding the reverb plugin and starting with the preset, which will loop back into channel EQ. I'm going to tell you something there as well. So let's first start with the electric guitar. Let's go down to the plugin and hover over this window here. Click, and then just type in reverb. So there's this new reverb in Logic called the Quantize Room Simulator. So let's add a mono reverb. And what we can do here is this might be intimidating. You're like, oh my God, what is all the dials here? Don't let it intimidate you. You're going to get used to all this stuff. Go to the drop down here and let's start with a preset just to get the wheels greased. So let's go down to a medium room. You know, no rhyme or reason. I just think let's try that, and I'll go to club. And we're going to now listen to what that sounds like on the guitar. So noticeably different, right? Now watch when I increase this big dial here, like for dramatic purposes. You can hear a large lushness of, well, also known as decay, behind the guitar. And what is happening here is 11.2 seconds of decay of reverb time is actually happening behind there. So it can sound cool in some things, but I would recommend not going too crazy with this, because the disastrous thing that could happen here is you end up bloating your mix and making it sound too muddy, let's say, for lack of a better word. So on reverbs, I like to keep it, unless you have a purpose of making something sound big and lush, I would keep your reverbs fairly small in the terms of the reverb time. There are other reverbs that you can consider adding too, not just this Quantize, but if you type in reverb, you'll go to the reverb folder, I think. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I just want to show you the folder. It is, where is it? There it is, reverb. So you have these options for free. Space Designer is a good one. They're all fairly reasonably good. I find when I first started, I gravitated towards the Space Designer. Again, really no rhyme or reason. I don't know why I keep saying that. But I want to show you a large space. So let's do something big, an ambient church. So I'm going to turn the Quantize reverb off so it doesn't get in the way. I'll show you what this ambient church sounds like. So way bigger, right? Now, just so you The most complex I want to get about talking about some of these plugins is a little bit about how reverb is an added dimension of sound that how I think about it is like adding reverb is actually like you're adding more sound because you're adding a reverberation of a sound. So what that means is like you have the guitar sound itself, like let's say this is the guitar sound, but then you're adding like reverb sound behind it. So you're actually adding, think of it like almost like a new track. And I will show you a way to actually add it as a new track. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this is like, think of reverb as like adding it as a separate sound. So watch as I increase the wetness and remove the dry sound now. Essentially what that is happening is like, I just told you, like we have the guitar sound here and then we have the reverb sound. Well, like think of the wetness sound as like your reverb sound, and then think of the dryness dial as like your guitar sound. So so now that we've taken away the dry sound, all we have is the reverb, the reverberation sound. Turn that down so it doesn't blow our ears up. So if I bring the dry sound back in, you'll hear both sounds now. Now, this is a huge reverb and it's really overwhelming, and so there's a lot of things we can do to clean that up using EQ, which blends EQ and reverb together, but it's not something I want to go down right now. That would be more like intermediate advanced tutorials. This is already probably more than enough to chew on when it comes to reverb. So fundamentals of reverb, add a reverb, start with a preset. Don't get too big unless you have a purpose of wanting to make something big. And then you can play with the dryness and wetness dials of the reverb. If you want more of the reverberation sound, you add the wetness. If you want less of the actual guitar sound, you play with the dryness dial here. So I just mentioned that you can add reverb as a separate track, right? Because you can kind of consider them like separate tracks. So let's just open the window of sends or aux tracks, just so you have that idea of space, because that's one of the powerful tools of any DAW is using sends or aux tracks. It's something that like GarageBand doesn't have, so that would be a big difference between those softwares. So, okay, you have sends down here. So I'm going to click the sends, and I'm going to go down to this thing called bus. And then you have all these things. These happen to be here by default. I didn't add these. Logic did this by default. So, okay, what is a bus? A bus, just think of a bus as a separate track. So you can kind of, for simplicity purposes right now, just think of that, just rename that word right now in your head to track. Yeah, I think that would be helpful for your learning. So just think, okay, track. So if it says track, and we have all these tracks here, I just want to click on bus 10 or track 10. And what I'm saying here when I click on that, it's going to do a couple things. So one thing is, you notice that this has changed on the right. I don't know if you noticed that, but it says now at the bottom here, aux 5. Now we have a new word. What is aux? So now we have sends, buses, and aux. They're kind of confusing. But what I want you to think, just for your learning purposes now, just think that they're all the same thing. It's just a track. Let's turn off our plugins because you don't need those anymore right now. Then we have this little dial here. And if I click it and scroll up or just go up, it fills this thing with green. So that means like, okay, on this track, I'm going to send signal to this track beside it, meaning the track we just added. So remember I added bus 10 when I went down here. I went to bus 10 and I added this track. So I'm now saying, so I have this track, the electric guitar track. I'm now saying, okay, I just added this new track, track 10. And now I'm going to send some of this signal to this track. Literally send it, like send it over to this track. And so as a send, I can say I want to send all of it. Like, let's say I have 100% of the guitar. I want to send 100% of the guitar over here, which kind of thinks you kind of then have like two guitars. Or I want to send 50% of it to this. So there's benefits of doing a little more, the same or even more. For the purpose of right now, I'm just going to send 100%. So that's 0.0. It's like full guitar track over to this bus 10, which is our track 10. Okay. So then we have essentially, when I solo these two tracks, you can kind of think of it like two guitars. And one way to help you visualize this is just, if I right click on this and create the track, you can see it up here. Let's just say track 10 for keeping it simple. Okay, I wanted to show you that now that things are clean. So we have our guitar, we have 0.0 going to track 10, which is here, track 10. And I've recreated the track 10. I've just created that track in here. So I have my electric guitar track, and now I have my track 10. Stay with me here because I know this is overwhelming if this is the first time you're going through this, but we're going to loop back and tie it in that this is really going to settle in nicely for you. So on track 10 now, see when I click it, it shows up here. I can add effects. I can add, and what I want to show you is just adding a reverb. So I'm going to add the Space Designer reverb in there. So I just searched for space. I'm going to click Space Designer and I'm going to do a stereo Space Designer because the reverb is stereo. And I'm going to go down to my preset here and I'm going to add the same reverb that I did before, which was what was it? Church, right? So I have my church reverb on track 10. Let's go back to the electric guitar. You can see, think like down when you're in your channel strip. So the sound is up here where my mouse is. It's coming down through the plugins, then it's hitting the send, and then it's going to the output. So what's happening is it's hitting the send and it's saying like, okay, oh, I've reached this part where it says, now I send out all of your signal to another track. So I can click this and that just so it shows up on the right side here. So this track here is where the electric guitar is going. Now, it's not going fully. It's going to, as I explain this is where I lose people because it's like the electric guitar goes to the stereo out track normally. So it's like forked here. The electric guitar comes down here, and then it's forked. So it's sent out somewhere else, but it also is going to the stereo out. So the benefit of this is I can, where I'm forking it to go to this track 10, I can now affect it differently. And I have a lot of flexibility to customize this sound because I have a full separate track to do that on, where I can add reverb, I can add many different plugins, and I can then shape a sound that can mix in nicely with the electric guitar. So I'm just going to, so let's say, I just want to show you what that could sound like. Just bear with me here as I just maybe make something a bit cleaner. I'm just going to add a stereo delay here. So watch what this could sound like. Hear the space behind the guitar? So watch as I move this volume dial up. This is just volume of the track 10, the auxiliary track. So I can now, when it's at low volume, you're not going to hear anything. Basically what you're hearing are these plugins. Watch when I increase the volume. You're starting to hear the effect. And so that's really cool because we have the dry, nice electric guitar, but we also have this new track 10, where we can mix in tastefully to that guitar. It goes even further, and we really dive into this more into the intermediate one. But like, the thing is here, because we've created this fork and we've created this send on the electric guitar track, I could go to my piano track now, and I could send the sum of the piano to my track 10, and I could send 100% of it to it, or I could send a little bit of the piano. And what this is doing is now that's going to track 10 too. So, and you'll hear this now, if I just play track 10, you're going to hear lots of delay and reverb, but you'll hear two instruments. You're going to hear the guitar and the piano, because both of these tracks are being sent to track 10. It's challenging to hear all that because it's like so reverby, right? But there's piano in there and there's electric guitar in there. So the benefit of that is you can use these auxiliary tracks to send, to take multiple tracks to that track. So you're creating glue on this track, you're creating cohesiveness, and you have the flexibility to shape the sound on the auxiliary track, which is this track 10. So this part of the video is really kind of beyond beginner level, but it's that window that opens up kind of the intermediate level of Logic or any DAW to really develop your sound to reach a polished level with your music. Okay, next is talking about compression. So compression is something we'll dive into more into the intermediate level, because you won't, if this is the first time in Logic, you're not going to hear compression, but you will, it's good to like, hey, tell you what it is a little bit, and then just open that window for you. So I would first start out again with a preset. You won't have these folders, ignore these. These are customized folders that I go into later in the intermediate level. We have dynamics, we have compressor. So a stock mono compressor would be something that you can add, but I would suggest starting with preset, right? So I have my guitar here, and I have my guitar electric compressor preset. So in short, a compressor is going to smooth out the dynamics of your sound, and is going to help. It's going to help. Well, it will make your compression usually makes the sound, let's say, more polished in a way, because you're, well, not always. I shouldn't say that so liberally, because it could also make it sound worse. But a compressor is going to basically, like, simple terms, it's going to raise the volume, let's say, of the quiet parts, and it's going to lower the volume of the loud parts, which means it's going to like take the high sounds, let's say, or take the sounds that are really loud and lower them, and take the low sounds and raise them. So you have this smoother dynamic, or smoother track where it won't sound so dynamic. And a good example of this is what I usually like to teach beginners is, like, imagine you have a guitar player who is playing like really soft in the verses, and then in a pre-chorus they're starting to get louder, and in the chorus they're playing really loud. So if you could imagine a track like this in Logic, you would have it would look really small, like the audio form would look really small when it's just the guitar player, and then it gets bigger as the guitar player starts getting to play louder. What happens here is, like, if you don't have a compression on it to balance out that signal, to smooth out those dynamics, it will really, you might not hear the guitar enough in in the verse because it's being lost in the mix. And then it's just way too loud in the chorus. It's just too dynamic. We want to have dynamics, but in music, you need to have compression on elements so that things fit together and are balanced better. So that's probably deeper than I actually wanted to go, but it's important to open this window for you because it's such a huge part of music production and even mixing, especially. So we're going to leave it at that for now. But if you go to vocal and go to voice, let's say dance vocal, there will be a compressor added here, right? You can see that. So you can click here on this little arrow, remember, and you can go to the preset compressor sounds, by type here or by tool. So, these are all just different styles of compression. So these might even throw you off because, what is VCA slow? What is VCA organ? These are just kind of modeled styles of compression after old analog compressors. But I'm digressing a little bit. So with compression, what you can think, what's the use case for you as a producer? If you have a sound, like I was saying, if you have a sound like a guitar player or a piano player or a singer, especially singing, where it's like quiet parts and loud parts, and it's just everything is a little bit too dynamic and things need to be settled a bit more, use a compressor to smooth out those dynamics. So let's move on to the blueprint, building out the song arrangement from a beginner level and beginner perspective. So you have everything really you need to know at this point to find sounds, develop sounds, add some plugins, but at this point we haven't really talked about like song arrangement or how to develop an idea. And that is a separate world of its own, like the world of songwriting and developing melody and harmony and developing song structure and lyrical writing. So it's not something we're going to step our foot into, but we will in this video step into song arrangement and developing the idea of a song a little bit with what we have, just so you have a base level of like, okay, how to move around to create a song in Logic, the shortcuts involved, how to think about arrangement, how to leverage software instruments to layer and find sounds, how to build dynamic with drums. This kind of thing we're going to get into at a base level too, so you have the confidence at least to like start creating a song, because at the end of the day, we're here to write music, right? We don't want to just sit there and learn all the technical aspects of Logic. We want to create something, and we want a song out of this. So with what we have here, we can actually learn the tools now within Logic to help create and develop this song a bit further. So let's talk a little bit about song structure. And I think the best way to visualize this is using the arrangement or marker tools in Logic here. So I like to use markers. You can use arrangement as well, but I just find markers just easier to work with. So I'm going to structure out actually a little song here. So I'm going to do a 4-bar intro. I'm going to, all I'm doing is clicking and adding a marker here, double clicking in, and typing in something. Verse 1 for, let's say 8 bars. Then I'm going to do a pre-chorus, for 4 bars, and then a chorus. So this is basic kind of modern structure. And then well, that didn't save. That's weird. See, sometimes Logic just doesn't listen. I'm going to click these 3. I did click Shift. I'm holding Shift and clicking these 3, and I'm going to do the Option Command drag to drag that over to about here. So then I can click in, and I just find that faster to chorus 2. So that's saved. Why doesn't this one save? Chorus 1. That's still not listening to me, but we'll move on. And then, you can have a bridge, you can have an outro, but you get the idea. Creating this structure, just visualize it, helps us visualize it. And you can open up the color box too to even make this a bit easier to see. So I can go Option C, This opens up this color box, Option C. Now I can click on the verse to make it red, click on the intro to make it pink, pre to make it blue, and then I can go chorus to make it green. So I can do the same things for these ones. Pre is blue, and the chorus was green. Now when I snap this up by pressing this little box here, it just helps us visualize it. You don't necessarily need this stuff, but it's a logic tool that can help you get there. Just to say like, hey, where are we going here? So now with this, I'm going to use my guitar part as our foundational, let's say, piece. So I'm going to zoom in on this, and I'll get to those shortcuts in the next section. And I have my guitar, little bits here of cuts that I made when we edited this audio. I want it to now be like one clean audio file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to join these tracks together. So I'm going to highlight them all by clicking here and just dragging over, highlighting all those specific regions. And I'm just going to press J. And that's, ignore that. I just froze that track. So just ignore that and press J. And it just says have like a clean audio track. So now I can actually copy and paste this. So this is something that all beginners should know. When you're copying and pasting files, we have the option click thing that we've learned, right? So I would suggest doing the option click. But you remember we did the option Command R, which is also an option to use. But I usually do option click drag and then I highlight both. Now I can do option click drag again to bring these over like this. And I kind of messed up the structure here, so I'm just going to clean that up so it's actually like in line with the guitar. That works. Bring the pre over. Bring the chorus here. That works. Okay, so we can actually like this is just copies of this guitar, right? So is that the best way to do it? In some songs, it's fine. And some, if this is just a guitar vocal song, you probably will want to do a guitar take that lasts the full song so you can get the dynamics of the playing. If it's more of a song where the guitar isn't the main priority, sometimes it's fine just to take loops of things because it's more just like having it there as texture versus having it there as being like, hey, notice me, the main thing. So it's not going to be, for now, loops are okay. So now we can say, all right, well, like, how do we develop this song? And you as the producer just need to think, well, okay, in the introduction, maybe I just want the guitar. So then I'm going to add the piano in the verse one, or maybe it's not until the pre, you know, maybe in the strings I'll bring in the pre-chorus or the chorus. Maybe the drums will. What I think the drums could be cool is to have the full drum set come in the chorus, but we'll have some less dynamic drums, something a bit simple in the verse. So what we can do there is, and I'll just leave the 80s wave bells muted. I want to keep it in there so you have it in the session later so you can experiment with the ARP. But I'm just going to have that muted right now, and I'll actually hide it. So I can press this H and I can press this H up here. So it's just kind of hidden in view. It's still there. And I'll start doing that to some tracks that we won't be using. So the bass, I think I'll have the bass come in the verse, and I can do Command R to duplicate that bass. Do I want it to go through the whole song? Probably. I'll get back to the drums here. Drums, I'm going to do Option click to drag this over. Option click and drag. Such a powerful shortcut. Really nail that into your muscle memory. But with this region, I'm going to edit the playing. So I'm going to open up my editor by pressing E, and I'm going to just simplify. Actually, won't have any hi-hats, let's say, and I might just have a less complex rhythm and less intensity, so that it just will. We obviously have to listen back to this stuff, but for the purpose of kind of keeping this grooving and with this tutorial moving without stopping and playing, I'll just build structure and then play after. So let's duplicate our piano a little bit. We should be okay here. I'm just making sure we're lined up kind of structurally. And we have our bus track here, track 10, which we'll leave muted right now, I think. You can also hide that if you want. You can press H on your keyboard to open up the hidden tracks. Cool. So we have now our keyboard. I think I will actually leave the keyboard muted, although it's cool. I think I'll just hide that right now as well. And then we have our vocal, which let's say comes in on the verse 1. So we can just click and drag this over to verse 1. So as I play through these tracks, I'm going to actually start adjusting the volumes a little bit and making mental notes of being like, that doesn't sound good, or I need to do this. So let's have a quick listen through from verse 1. So everything sounds like just as I expected, to be honest. It's just like loop to loop, and it's very blocked, and nothing sounds really, really that good, to be honest. And this is like, am I surprised? No, I literally just took all these loops and just looped them. So it sounds like really, really, let's say, stock. But, I don't want to. I think this is probably a good, like, let's say, to be honest, songs that I hear do sound like this sometimes when they get songs from real beginners. So it's good to point out that that this does sound stock. So what are some things we could do to change that? And it would be like getting back into like, all right, well, if this is, where do you want the song to go? Like, what is your direction for this song? We don't have lyric or harmony or melody. We're just listening to the backing track right now, so it feels a little stale. So it is a little bit like we are. We haven't made the decisions that we need to yet to help us find the direction, which is like we need the song. We need the lyric. We need the melody of the song. So like I would say, like, if this is going to be your chord progression, if you're going to do an A minor, F G C thing, let's sit with that. That's fine. Let's write this song around it. What's the message? What's the verse going to be? What's the chorus going to be? And then let's get back into logic, and then let's find the parts. But if we're moving at it in the direction of like, all right, well, let's build a backing track first, it becomes more difficult because we're like trying to find what our like the point is. And when we have the song, the point is the song. So it's like, love takes all, and that's the title, and we work around the title and the chorus, and we build up the vocal melody to sit there. But we don't have that right now. So it's like, okay, is the guitar the main thing? Should we let that shine and increase the volume and build the arrangement around it? Yeah, I guess that's what we're kind of doing now. So in that we would say like, okay, well, this piano should be quantized better because it's just a little loose. So we know how to do that now. We could highlight everything and quantize that by a 16th note, right? So highlighting everything, Command A, and quantizing by 16th note. It's grayed out here because I froze that track. So sometimes as I'm making these videos, and this might happen to you without doing any screen sharing, but I'm sharing my screen and kind of doing a lot of processing. So the computer freezes up. So if you right click on a track and go to track header components, this list here are the icons of things that you could have available on the track itself. So you see how it says these little check marks? These little check marks mean that these things, mute, solo, freeze, record, enable, and input monitoring, are available on the track. So you see here, I just bring this out. We have mute, solo, freeze, and then if I unfreeze it, I have record, enable, and input monitoring. So freezing just means that it will actually like make your computer run faster. But I digress a little bit. So now let's go back into the piano. Let's open up the editor by pressing E, Command A to highlight everything, and quantize by 1/16th note just to lock those in. Right away, the drums and bass vibe are not working for me at all. So I would spend some time deciding like, okay, is this a drum and bass song? Do we want a beat, or do we want just maybe the guitar, piano, and strings vibe, which is a cool vibe as well? And maybe in the drums we take out the snare. So open up the editor and just take out the snare for a second because I thought that it just wasn't working. And we can listen to just these 3 tracks here. Maybe play with the bass a bit. The snare's still in there. The thing about session tracks is if you have it frozen, you can actually still edit stuff, but it's not going to actually work. So you need to unfreeze the track for that stuff to lock in. So let's unfreeze that. So now that's locked in. And the bass for me wasn't working, so I'm going to open up the editor there. And I find that the rhythm is just not working. So I'm going to also follow the drummer, follow the rhythm of the drummer. So that could change things there. And it's frozen, so none of those changes are being made. So unfreeze the bass and then have another go at it. And that's like already better. It's less busy. That would fit, I think, stronger with the electric guitar. Yeah, this isn't the best song in the world, but we're trying just to make things fit quickly. You know, from a beginner, very, very beginner perspective, right? And then think to yourself, okay, like now that, you know, we've developed some of these sounds, are there some plugins that or presets that we could add that could brighten up this sound? And you might think, yeah, I want some reverb, or I want to sound more spacious or lush. I want it to sound bigger, wider. This is where we can start bringing some plugins to help us get those results, but using presets as our ground knowledge, because we haven't moved much beyond that. And then it's really just a question of going through your song like this and always gut checking, like with your artist brain, that says like, is this grooving? Is this sounding good? Is this the direction I want to take the song? Thinking in steps. So like of your song, introduction, verse, pre-chorus, building up to a chorus, settling down again in verse 2, building it back up to a chorus 2, having those peaks and valleys of an arrangement that would actually kind of visually look like this. Just bear with me here with those shortcuts. I'm just doing Command R and Option click like pretty fast to do that. But you know, this visually does look like peaks and valleys, where you have like just the guitar, then a bit busy in the verses, another valley in the pre-chorus. Okay, chorus gets bigger, and then it drops down again in the pre. Maybe we have the drums come in again for this specific part here. Okay, and then building it back up to the chorus. So like, without actually listening to it, this won't sound good yet, but visually we can see like, okay, peaks and valleys. That's what we kind of want to build toward with the song. So what I'm going to do here is, and you already have the session file, so get it in the link in the description, because what I'll do is I'll give you an example of like in the hidden tracks, I will keep our raw tracks here of what we have just hidden, but then I'll duplicate them and develop a little bit of a vibe here with using some plugins that you can look into to see what I've done, that open up windows for you to be like, oh, how do you do that? And then you can go into those plugins in the session, because these are all, you'll have all these plugins. I'm not using anything paid here. Let's talk about shortcuts now. And I'm going to, without just like naming the shortcut, I'm going to give you some context and examples behind how to use each one. So the first one would be Command D. So this is to duplicate tracks. And I do this often because I might want to layer a track, or just actually have the same track in a different octave. So if I'm working on the piano track and I'm like, wow, this piano is really rocking for the chorus, I want a higher octave of that piano, or I want the same MIDI with a different sound. I'll just go Command D, which duplicates the entire track with the plugins. So yeah, that's it. Just Command D, because I might think, oh, want the piano, Command D, and then I'm off to the races with this piano sound. I can record enabled, and boom, put that one right in there. So moving on with this example, simple R. Just press R on your keyboard. When you duplicate that track, you're ready to record. So you just press R, and you have your recording. Let's move on to the next shortcut. And I'm kind of trying to blend all these shortcuts into like one example here. So the next shortcut would be C. So if I press C, I have the cycle bar. So I can press C and have that on or off. I can also, when I press C, have it on and drag it around with my mouse. I mentioned this before, but if you're just kind of skipping to this, the shortcut section is, let's say I duplicated this piano track, right? So I did Command D to duplicate the piano track, and now I want to record on the chorus. I don't actually have to go and move my playhead over there. I know that if a cycle is on, the recording will happen in the cycle range, so I can just press R and the playhead will snap, like will jump over to this area and it will record. So it could also be behind it too. You can just press R and it will go record in that range, okay? So that's super cool. So let's say you didn't want to record and you duplicated this track. So you duplicate this track by doing Command D, and then you don't want to record it, you just want to copy the MIDI over. Well, Option click, we used it a few times in the video. You're going to take anything from this video. This is like the fast copy paste shortcut. So hold Option on your keyboard, press left click, drag down, and then let go of click. Don't let it go of Option first. And then you make a copy, and then you can drag that copy over. So Option click. This works for if you're doing anything copy and paste with anything in Logic, whether it's specific MIDI notes itself, or whether it's region or multiple regions, or use Option click to copy. Don't do the Command C, Command V stuff. Okay, now let's say I want this software track, this new piano track that we've duplicated. I've just copied that over. Let's say I now want to extend it. So I could do the Option click to, extend it. See, there you go. I let go of Option. Option click, hold Option, let go of click. Option click, let go of click first. I could do it like that if I wanted to make copies of it. I could also do highlight the region and do Command R, which duplicates things. So it's just Command R, which duplicates regions. And you can do that for multiple regions, right? So if I highlight all these and do Command R, I'm going to do a full duplicate of all these regions. Now, one thing to mention is if you do something like, let's just for the purpose of learning, if I highlight all these and do Command R, it does a copy, but it will start with a paste at the latest point, which happens to be here. So this isn't really good for my purpose because I want these, let's say, these tracks to be here, right? So if I want to do that, I only want to highlight these regions. I don't want to bring this specific region in because that's going to shift the whole paste over or the whole duplicate over. Okay, so let's just undo that. So you have these regions here. The next two shortcuts quickly. Y, opening up the library. This is going to be really, really helpful when you want to change a software instrument, or you want to change a drummer, or if you want to get a preset on an electric guitar or vocal track or whatever. Y opens up the library. You're going to use that a lot. And then the next one, you're going to use E a lot to edit things. So E, remember E editor, to open up the editor, to edit MIDI on a track, to open up the drummer, to customize the drummer, to edit the timing of an electric guitar. You can open up that. It will be something you use a lot. Zooming. I did this one a lot throughout the video, but left the explanation until now because it does take a bit of practice. You can do the old, like the old way. I don't know. This just takes so long to get your mouse over here and do that, I find. So the faster way to do that is just by using the okay, so let's say like the level 1 way would be holding Command on your keyboard and pressing the down arrow. This lets you lengthen tracks, and then if you hold Command and do a right arrow, this lets you I guess zoom in on tracks horizontally. So I can do them both like this. Go right, 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 down, down, down. I'm kind of lengthening and fattening at the same time. So that's with the keyboard. That's, I would say, like level 1 if you like the keyboard shortcuts. With the mouse, you can get faster by actually just holding Option wherever you are. Not actually, you shouldn't say wherever you are. If you are on a gray space here, like not on a region, you can hold Option, and then you can create a square like this over anything you want to zoom in on. So let's say this drummer, pop rock. There, I zoomed in on it. And I can do it again. I can continue to zoom in at like really deep levels. If I want to zoom out, I just have to hold Option and click, like just click out. Like it, literally, I just clicking, like I'm holding Option and clicking. That just like zooms it out at the same amount of times that you zoomed in. So I find that really, really quick. Here's a little taste of what you might get in the intermediate session or when you're ready for this stuff. Like I said, that you can hold Option and your magnifying glass will come up on if you're on a gray space, but you can actually do it on a region if you hold Option and Command. If you hold Control and Option, you can get a magnifying glass anywhere. So this is detailed, right? Like this is subtle because we're talking about having your magnifying glass show up if you're just on a gray space with Option. If you see if I'm on this region and I press Option, that magnifying glass won't show up. But if I press Control, that magnifying glass will show up. So I actually do it with Control because sometimes I have a session where it's like really, really busy where I don't actually have a lot of gray space. So I need that Control option so I can zoom in. These shortcuts are your gateway to getting speed and confidence. Don't underestimate these. It's what's going to make you feel a lot more happier producing the Logic. But be patient with yourself. Seriously, it takes some time it takes days a little bit to get in there, to get into that muscle memory. But once it's in, and you don't think about it anymore. Okay, last two, we have cut, which you've seen me do, and I added as a third click tool. So to add a third click tool, because you probably will only see two here, you go to Logic Pro settings, general, I believe, within editing tab here. And you can, to right mouse button is assignable to a tool, which gives you the opportunity to have this option here. And you don't, it doesn't have to be scissors, it could be anything. But the scissors gives you an option to cut things quickly. Like if I want to cut this region, I just right click it and then that region is cut. So it's super fast, right? And not something you have to think about too much. Next one, even simpler, is just K. K brings the metronome on and off. So if I'm ready to record and the metronome isn't on, I find myself pressing K a lot because I want to record vocals or guitars or anything I'm playing with the metronome on, and often I have it off because I don't like listening back too much to the metronome. So what the use case is usually like I've begun the recording and I'm realizing the metronome's on, so I don't want to stop the recording. You can, meanwhile, while it's being recorded, you can just press K and it will come on. So I do, it's super simple, but in reality, it's something I do a lot. That is the little, I just opened the door like this much to shortcuts. And I literally, in my my first YouTube channel under my own name, Charles Klein, I've given like 300 shortcuts, and that's still, well, that's I've swung the door open on that one, but there's still a lot you can do to customize your workflow in Logic to make you super fast. Let's make this thing real now, and let's export our song, and let's go through a couple of the important things you'll need to know to get your song exported. So if you've downloaded the file in the description, you'll see like a much more presentable song than this, and I'll show you how you can export that song. So the first step is, what I like to do is use the cycle range to be your start and end points of the song, because it's not always, you're not always just beginning at bar one. So I just like to start a little bit in. And you never know when your song's going to end. So I use the cycle bar to be my markers for start and finish. So mark your song where you want it to start and end based on the export bar. So I'm starting at bar 9 and it's going to end at bar. You just end. You say where you want it to end. So I'm going to play the last 2 bars of piano. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 63 feels good to me, so I'm going to have it at 63. And now I've selected my start and end times, so I can go, the shortcut there is Command B. You can also click this button down here, it says BNC. And now we choose what file type we want to export as. So if you want a low file size, choose MP3. It's lower file size, meaning the quality is a bit less. So if you're wanting to just share this with a friend or share a demo out, MP3 is fine. If you're wanting to upload it to streaming service or to have a bit of a higher quality file to upload somewhere, use PCM and then select the file type as WAV. You can choose a higher sample rate if you want. The bit depth of 16-bit is totally fine. And here's your start and end times. That's based on the locator, the cycle. So you don't have to change any of this. You can leave this mode as automatic. What happens here is in real time, it will play your song as it's bouncing through. I don't like that personally, so I just have it as automatic. And normalize, you do want to have that set as off. If you set that as on, it will change how your song is played. It's actually going to increase the volume. So it could be cool with sometimes, but oftentimes I just find it better to, when the normalize is off, that means you're going to export the song as how you've been listening to it. So we have that as off, and you can have these interleaved and none. And then the next page is just like where you save it in your Mac. So just like put it in your folder that you like, or make a new folder, or whatever, and call it your awesome new song here. And then bounce it out. Now, if you a couple other things just with file management there, if you want to rename your Logic project because you maybe started the song with like song idea brainstorm, and then you finally have a title, so you want to change excuse me, you want to change the file, you go to File, Project Management, and Rename, and then like rename your song there. I thought it's super simple, but something I didn't know you could do for a while. A couple other things in terms of just backups and file management in Logic, especially as a beginner, you're a bit worried about like, if I mess something up, or am I going to lose stuff? So Logic auto saves projects, so if it crashes, it will auto save it. You can also revert to old projects, so it creates these kind of backups for you. And so I can revert to like 2 days ago. I can back up, and that's pretty cool. Like, I don't have to do any of this. Logic is doing this all for me. And I think that's just really, really helpful, because if you do a big mess up and you're like, you can just go back to, what are we, April 24th here? So we can just go back to this morning. Like, look, I can go back to a couple hours ago when I started, and I could just, start from where I was if I really royally messed that up. Last thing here is just alternatives. Project alternatives are something, it's kind of like making a duplicate project within the same project. So you could have a new alternative project, which means like, you can call it like the new idea, or like new mix, or so you're trying something. The purpose of this would be like, you really like what you have going here, but you want to try something else without changing this. So you would create a new alternative, and then you can like go back and forth between different versions by going back and forth between the alternatives. Really, really helpful tool. I do that a lot when I'm like, when I want an alternative idea. Last thing I'll mention on backups is stuff which is kind of outside of Logic, but I'll just mention quickly, is we're all on Macs because we're using Logic, and you should consider using like something like the Time Machine backup, which will just save your life in general, because it backs up your entire Mac onto external hard drive, and then you can just have all your life or your computer saved in that, and you can run that on auto backup. I won't show you how to do that, but it's something you can look into. It's called Time Machine Backup with Mac. So let's talk about taking it from Logic all the way to Spotify or Apple Music, any other streaming service. There are a couple of things involved. The first would be to actually, in a couple last few sections, we talked about exporting. When you're ready to export to streaming services, you're going to want to make sure your song is at the level of volume that these streaming services ask for. So this is a process called mastering, which is, and simple terms, it just means to like say, is your song like loud enough in a basic form? Is your song loud enough to be on Spotify, for example? Because Spotify has requirements. Apple Music, they'll have requirements to make sure that every single song that is uploaded to their streaming service, that it is at a specific volume level. And this is good that they do this, because many people will have gone deaf if they didn't do this, because that means if you were listening to a playlist, one song might be really, really low in volume, and then the next song is like way too loud, and then but because you listened to the song before, you really raised the level of the volume on your headphones, and then the next song plays and it's so loud, and then you break your eardrums. So what Spotify does is they just like make sure all the songs are at the same volume level. They will all sound differently, though every song has dynamics and will sound differently, but literally the levels of volume will be similar. so no one breaks their eardrums. Now, so you have to make sure you do this when you upload to the streaming services. You can pay to have this done. You can use online services that use AI to have your songs mastered. One that comes top of mind is Lander. They do a great job. You pay for it and they'll master your song, so it's like, loud enough. Keep in mind, this won't, if you have a bad song, like mastering won't do anything. It will just make your bad song sound louder. It doesn't fix your song. It doesn't clean up your song, really. It will just make it like, it just has a stamp of being like, this song is mastered, it's loud enough, and it's good to go. It really isn't a fixed thing. Like, all that stuff happens before. It's just a process that, it's just a box you need to tick when you get your song finished. So there is a tool you can use in Logic. It's called the Mastering Assistant, which is a new AI tool that they built and that they're continuing to develop. You can go to it on the stereo out channel here, and you can go to, you just type in Mastering Assistant, but it should be like right here too. Yeah, stereo. And yeah, it's an AI tool, so it's gonna, you can click Analyze, and it's actually just doing it for me, even without me asking. I guess I added the plugin, so it's doing it and it's analyzing my song. It's going to be like, okay, we think you should do this to your song. We want to increase the volume here. We want to add some dynamics. We want to EQ it a little bit. It's shaping the overall sound of your song. I think it's a good tool to add as a beginner and to get used to just trying out this tool and what like mastering does, and it's a great tool to just get your feet wet. I think it's limiting in terms of what it can do if you're at more like a professional level, where you want to do some things that it can't do. You might use better tools, better plugins, and get different results. But to be honest, as a beginner, try it out. I think it's good. And it just gives you that, let's say, comfort in knowing that, okay, your song is like loud enough now. So this is what it looks like, and you can see it's generated this EQ curve for us by saying like, we think your song is muddy in this area, we think it can be brighter in this area. So it's like suggesting some changes, and then it's suggesting some loud, it's not really suggesting any loudness, but it's suggesting some width. And you can always turn that off, remake changes within your song, come back here, turn it on, and then you can reanalyze by pressing this button, and then it'll reanalyze using its own AI tool. Okay, so once that is live, then you can bounce out a WAV file, bounce out that 16-bit WAV file, and go to something like Spotify or Apple Music. Now, how do you get your song on these services? You need to use something called the Music Distributor. You know how you can go to YouTube and just make a YouTube video and click upload? You can't do that with Spotify or any streaming service. They use these middlemen, which are called music distributors, so that the music distributors can like go through their clipboard of things and be like, is your song mastered? Do you have a song name? Who wrote the song? Do you have artwork for your song? So you need all those like requirements. So they just outsource that to a distributor. So TuneCore, DistroKid, Lander, those are 3 distributors that I can recommend. And you pay them a fee and they get your music uploaded to those streaming services. Now, in return, they will pay you for your song. So you will make money with your song. You might make 0.04 cents or dollars, or you might make, a few $1,000s. We don't know. But the idea is you will get paid, they will pay you. So every month I get a check from the distributor from all the music I make. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's nice to be paid for your work. So what's next? How do you take what we've created here and actually make it like, this could be the world's best new song, or at least to get to a level where you're like, I'm super proud of this. I want to do this every day. I want to share this with my friends. And I want you to get to a point where you're just like, you can create the songs that you hear in your head at a level where you're really proud to share it and that's fulfilling to you. Like that's what matters. So how do we get there? Because there's still obviously a barrier in there because you're watching this right now and there's still a gap that you can't get there. So what do you need? You need structured curriculum and you need a teacher like myself and a community of people that can help you get there. And that's what I can offer you. And so you can look at that link in the description. It's a 90-day Logic Pro Producer program where I can take you from start to finish. And if you thought this was deep, we go way deeper. And the fact is, you just need the advice and the feedback from someone like me just to help you know where to go and to check in and be like, this doesn't sound good. You should go here. You should stop doing this. You should start doing this. And to have that hand holding, not necessarily even hand holding, just to have that guidance of someone to take you through those steps, because that removes the barrier and then it gets you to that level where you're like doing things on your own and you're fulfilled by it. The alternative there is if you keep doing this on your own. You watch YouTube tutorials, you become frustrated, you become lost, you're so misguided, you don't have anyone to support you, and you have no feedback. And it will take years and years to get there. This is going to cut those years down in half, way less than half. You'll be within 90 days. You'll have the whole toolkit and the knowledge plus the support to be making the music that's in your head confidently that will fulfill you. So check out that link in the description and let's have a chat. I hope to see you in the program.